Janet Evans,
Good evening,
Chair of the
everyone.
CA
I'm
Board of
Janet Evans,
Directors.
Chair of the CA
Please
Board of
remember that
Directors.
this meeting
Please
is being
remember
live
that this
streamed.
meeting is being live streamed.
You can find tonight's agenda and
You can
background
find tonight's
materials
agenda
on
and
CA's
background
board
materials on
webpage,
CA's
or
board webpage,
links to the
or
documents are also
links to
in
the
the
documents are
description section
also
of
in
our
the
YouTube
description
live
section
stream.
of our YouTube
If
live
you're
stream.
virtual, which we
If
all
you're
are tonight,
virtual,
thank
which
you.
we all are
Please
tonight,
mute your
thank you.
computers
Please mute your computers
or phones unless you're
or
speaking.
phones unless you're
Raise your hand to
speaking.
speak. I'll record
Raise
the
your hand
names
to
in the
speak. I'll
order in
record
which
the
I
names in
see
the
them.
order in which I see them.
For those of us using the chat feature, if anyone wants to help me monitor, I welcome that. As we move through the meeting, I will introduce each
Hi,
item.
Dan. Sorry to interrupt. We're
Hi,
experiencing
Dan.
a
Sorry to
feedback
interrupt.
issue. We're hearing you double. Please hold.
We're hearing you double.
Okay.
Please hold. Okay.
Sorry, doing a quick test via the audio. Drew, do you hear any doubling?
Drew, do you hear any doubling?
I want you to. No, can you respond? Drew, can you respond through the Google
Drew,
Meet?
can you respond through the Google Meet?
Yes, you're coming through fine. I'm not getting double. Coming through fine. I'm not getting double.
Okay, I am.
Okay, I am.
Please hold. Let me go check something.
Please hold. Let me go check something. Checking the audio again. Drew, can you hear me?
Coming through fine. Waiting for.
That fixed it. That fixed it.
All right. Good to go. Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you. As we move through the agenda or the meeting, I'll introduce each item on the agenda. And if at any point anyone has trouble hearing me or any other board member, please raise your hand and I will now call the roll. Andy?
Present.
Sherry?
Present.
Ginny?
Present.
Nick?
Here.
Lynn?
Here.
Tina?
Here.
Jess?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
Ashley?
Here.
Lakey?
Yes, I'm here.
And I am here. Thank you. Eric Greenberg will be our timekeeper tonight. All right, so may I have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Ginny moves. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ginny moved. Lynn seconded. Any objections? Okay, unanimous. All right, now we'll move on to the resident speak out portion of our agenda. First up, we have Richard Bannister. Is Richard with us? I do not see his name, so we'll come back to him at the end if he has joined. Jennifer Nwasu? Okay. Amy Bennett. You are muted, Amy. Amy, are you able to unmute? Do you see a microphone at the bottom of your screen on the left? Would you like to put your issue that you're having unmuting in the chat feature and maybe we can help you? So Amy, I'm going to move on to the next resident and then we will come back to you, okay? Thank you. All right, next up we have Dara Baker. Dara, are you with us?
I am. Hi, everyone. Good evening.
Welcome.
I unfortunately need to take 30 seconds to hopefully less than that to find the document. I am speaking on behalf of Protect Our Stream on the issue of the stream restoration project. Our plan was to continue reading into the record for the Columbia Association the letter from the Chesapeake Bay Foundation that Amy began reading last week. We want to bring this to the attention of the board and to provide additional information about concerns and objections to the project. So
okay, Dara.
Yes.
Dara,
oh, Amy, you're there.
Yes, I am. So let me explain to the board. Dara and Richard are on the line, but they're there to answer questions. And if you give us the time to read in the Sierra comments, I am going to start the evening off and they are going to be available. Since last week, I wanted to answer your questions better. So now I have that support. Okay?
Oh, yep. Why don't you kick it off then, Amy?
Okay. Good evening and thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I would also like to thank the board for coming out on Sunday to look at the proposed mitigation site. You are all very, very busy people and we appreciate very much your time. I have 2 residents with me tonight who are available to answer questions and to speak further if allowed. Again, tonight I will be reading comments that were officially submitted to both the Corps and the Maryland Department of the Environment on the Lake Elkhorn Mitigation Bank. Sorry, I ran downstairs to get help on the computer and I'm out of breath. I just want to reiterate again that the time to respond to concerns raised by environmental groups and the community is now. The over 100-page prospectus submitted by WSSI provides the framework for what is being proposed, what is currently being evaluated, and what many people have raised concerns about. Once approved, and that is after the February 23rd, unless we get an extension, we will only be able to tinker around the edges. An example of this problem is exemplified by the official comments from the Department of the Interior, Fish and Wildlife Services. They state, quote, "The stream corridor appears to be especially constrained between High Tor Hill and Tamar Drive and is fragmented from the rest of the bank by Jackson Pond and inline impoundment. Considering its limited biological restoration potential, this reach may be better suited for other programs with sediment load and nutrition reduction goals." The point is, end quote, if the proposal proceeds as written, the stated concerns remain. So both in CBF's comments and now in Fish and Wildlife, we have the same issue about Reach 1. And that's the reach from Tamar down to Jackson Pond, where there's the most constriction. I have yet to hear anybody refute the statement of the Fish and Wildlife, which have also been echoed by CBF. This issue is further complicated by the fact that WSSI is required to respond to the department and the community comments. The revised proposal from WSSI will not allow for further comment and will be the basis of the Corps and MDE's decision unless an extension is granted. So at this point, there's no way to know how WSSI is responding to the concerns raised by the environmental groups. And it might be, in the end, that maybe they've made some changes that are reflective of the comments that were received. We just don't know that now. So as part of the review process, the Fish and Wildlife...
30 seconds?
30 seconds? I have 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. Keep going.
But please let me know when I have 30 seconds. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
So as part of the review process, there's an internal review, and Fish and Wildlife provided the following comments. Everything I say from this point forward is from that document. Okay. Mitigation banks are established to offset unavoidable stream and wetland impacts and are intended to support the Clean Water Act goals to restore and maintain the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. However, the bank's location is dominated by urban land uses, and therefore its biological restoration potential will be limited. According to the prospectus, the bank's drainage area has an average impervious surface of 26%, but the United States Geological Service Stream Survey website calculates the drainage at 42.8% impervious. While not suitable for mitigation credits, current and planned stormwater management and improvements should be inventoried to determine if these activities might complement the proposed bank restoration work and support uplift of the aquatic community. And I think that we would all agree with that. The existing infrastructure, forested riparian areas, and narrow widths of the Columbia Association property along the corridor will constrain stream restoration design and further limit biological restoration potential of the proposed bank. Forest clearing along the corridor and especially
Amy, you're at 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Within forest dwelling areas. The stream appears to be especially constrained between High Tor Hill and Tamar Drive and is fragmented from the rest of the bank by Jackson Pond, and is better suited for other programs. So I guess there's just a couple things. One, again, the issues that
Amy, you're at time.
10.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Amy? Jenny?
Sorry about that. What I hear you saying is that you have to comment now. But I also heard, I thought, our staff telling us that, in fact, there'll be a next steps, and maybe this is a question sort of for Lakey as well, next steps that will be a design, and that at that point, I thought it would be the board, I mean the CA board and staff would be actively involved in that to look at the actual, a more extensive design perhaps, and be able to comment on it. And I hope have it as a public process and be able to vote on it. And what does that mean exactly in terms of, I don't know how the board would vote at that point, but what weight would that carry in terms of this process, if any? Or is it really a done deal, and we have no real say? I'm really not clear. I'm hearing two different things.
Well, I would yield to Lakey
Actually,
first, and absolutely yield to Lakey first, and then I'm happy to comment.
Okay, so from a factual standpoint, I think it's important to understand that there is a public comment period that is open right now. That is now scheduled. It was extended. This is the second time, to February 23rd. What is in front of us in terms of a process is a decision around a funding mechanism, which is a mitigation bank permit. There has been no design, there has been no planning, there is no impending construction. This is a multi-year project. So in terms of where we are squarely in the phase, that is where we are. If the mitigation bank permit is approved, then the phase of design and planning would start. That has a legal requirement as well as a CA commitment to community engagement, which we would anticipate to be very extensive. And we would continue the path that we have already started along the idea of going around not only to the village boards, but doing on-site tours, doing meetings, having very detailed interaction, because it would be actually landing on the ground and starting to determine everything from what is real site disturbance, what is the area that is actually impacted, what are the details of the project. So that's in broad strokes. There is not, as far as I understand it, any further requirement of the CA board in terms of you referenced a vote, but certainly, you know, that I assume, I guess, would be up to the CA board, but there would be multiple more points in the process. If you want to get more granular than that, then certainly we can have staff follow up further than my comments, but I think that addresses, you know, kind of the question.
okay, a follow-up question for Lakey. So if I understand what you're saying, then that there would be a chance to look at the design, the public would have that opportunity, and it sounds like what you're saying, if the CA board chose to be involved at that point, they could, they don't have to be, they could. What weight would it, God knows what would happen then, but what weight would the CA board's vote have on the process if they found there is a major flaw? Or, you know, they're in total agreement with it, they vote yes, so there's no problem. But if they find there's a problem and they really want a change since it's our land, what would do we have any power to make any change, or is it completely out of our hands, is what I'm trying to find out.
So the first part of your question, yes, there would be engagement. So I just want to state that again and again. I would foresee multiple public meetings, both with adjacent residents as well as people across the community, as we have already been doing. In terms of the CA board role, I think that there is not, again, an official part of the process, but in terms of a regulatory, but I think you hit the nail on the head a moment ago, which is it is being done on our land. So we would be working in close collaboration and coordination with the contractor. So our ability to listen to the public and feel confident that changes that are being requested, that are reasonable, that are the ones that we think are appropriate, that our technical staff who have deep expertise in this across our sustainability team believe are appropriate, we absolutely would have a role in shaping the process.
And I really would like to respond to that, Janet. Lakey, with all due respect.
30 seconds, Amy.
Okay, with all due respect, Lakey, that's simply not true about, here's the example again. I happen to know that there have been a number of comments about this constricted area on phase 1. I believe you know that as well. I've also been told that they are considering removing Reach 1 from the proposal. I would love CA's support on that because that's where all the houses are and that's where the constriction is. So if you
could wrap up your comments.
Okay, if this proposal is approved on February 23rd or whatever date, the 6 miles is in. There is no way to take a reach out, and that's the truth.
Dick, you had a question?
Well, I just wanted to respond to Ginny's question. This will involve easements, and easements have to be approved by the board, so that would be where the board would fit in.
We've already approved the easement.
Okay, take it back.
And more than was required by law. You gave 50 feet on either side instead of 35.
Amy, if you could please.
Okay, I'll mute.
Thank you.
Yep.
Any other questions for Amy? Okay, thank you for your comments, Amy.
Yep.
Okay, next up we have Steve Sachs.
I'm unmuted. Okay.
You are unmuted.
I'm unmuted. Can you hear me? Okay. My name is Steve Sachs. I'm talking on behalf of the Columbia Festival of the Arts. I lived in Howard County for 45 years and was active as a former president of the festival. And after my 2 terms on the board, have served as an emeritus board member for more years than I can remember. I came to Columbia to work for the Rouse Company and did so as an employee and contractor for 31 years, some of the best years of my life. I served on Howard Community College Board of Trustees for 12 years, as chair for 2, the Horizon Board for 8 years, chaired Spending Affordability Advisory Committee under 2 county executives for 6 years, been a member of the Columbia Rotary Club for 44, and was a founder and board member of the Howard Bank for 10 years. And I only mention that not to verify my age, which you can tell is not young, but to let you know that while I no longer live in Howard County, I have not left the organizations that I have touched, either financially or in support of their missions. Most importantly, I joined the festival at the request of an executive vice president at the Rouse Company, Al Scavo, with little involvement in the arts, but it was an ask that I couldn't refuse. I thanked Al for that assignment that began for me a love affair and, more importantly, an understanding of the arts that enriched my life immensely. The arts touched my soul, and I'm in awe of what I am able to experience in various art forms. So that brings me to Lake Fest and the wonderful support that CA has provided over the years. The Columbia Association has been the most critical and consistent supporter of our organization. And without the Lake Fest, there would be no Columbia Festival of the Arts. Your mission is to engage our diverse community, cultivate a unique sense of place, and enhance the quality of life. When Jim Rouse and Mort Halpenfeld created the Tivoli Gardens Lake area, it became the perfect location for Lake Fest, which was the kickoff for the Columbia Festival of Arts celebration of the arts and community. When I was working at the festival over weekends, I would look out upon the crowd, noting their diversity of ages, colors, ethnicity, and could image Jim smiling down at what was an artistic canvas of what he imagined in his vision for this new city. The festival, through the Lake Fest celebration, attracts 20,000 attendees over the weekend.
30 seconds.
I think I have 5 minutes. That's what I was told.
Oh, 5 minutes?
So one person gets to speak for the organization. If
Okay.
multiple people are speaking for the same organization, then you would be limited to 3 minutes each. So
Okay.
I'm not
Sorry
sure.
about
I
that.
think there are, yeah. So Eric, this isn't to you. We have several members who are speaking on behalf of the Columbia Festival of the Arts, but only one can speak on behalf of the organization itself, and everyone else is speaking as, a resident.
Okay.
Allison, I'll need less than 3 minutes, and I'm current board chair, so Steve can take 5.
Okay.
Okay.
Sorry, sorry about that.
What?
Sorry about that.
Well,
Steve, you can take the full 5.
Let me just pick up then. It attracts over 20,000 attendees of the weekend, not just to see bands and singers perform on the stage, not that that's not great, but to experience a variety of art forms, including high-quality juried artists displaying their creations in crafts and jewelry, paintings, pottery, metalwork, and unique artistic events such as On Stilts, the March 4th Marching Band, and Sway, where the performers were on poles and it went viral in Columbia and created crowds, probably the largest in our history, of over 30,000 that weekend. And by the way, they are hopefully slated to return this year. I'm a business guy, and I recognize that your budget and fiscal responsibility is an important one. I get it, but I think, and I want to emphasize, that CA should also take a look at what having this organization contributes and has contributed to the community and its own mission, and to CA and other groups in Columbia. The festival knows how to professionally stage and organize events and can marshal and manage the resources to do that. Columbia Association has benefited during the 4th of July celebration and other events, and other art groups have learned to access the festival's resources and abilities to enhance their events. Robert Marshall and Dave Simmons have worked hard to expand the reach of the festival by sharing our expertise in connecting the dots and managing the process or assisting in that for other groups in the community. I hope that the Columbia Association will find a way to provide financial support that is critical to the Lake Fest weekend and, by fact, the survival of the Columbia Festival of the Arts.
30 seconds.
Thank you. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you tonight.
Welcome.
Thank you. Any questions for Steve? I see Tina.
Thank you, and thank you for coming out tonight. I wanted to ask how long has CA been providing support to the festival?
As far as I know, back to the beginning, and I don't go back. I joined the festival probably in 2003 or 2004, but for a long, long time. I know when I became president of the festival, I worked with another lady, Ann Stewart, who was with Sunrise, and we actually looked at restructuring, and they looked at, would it be worthwhile to try to save money and move away from lakefront, because that's a big piece of it. And the reality is that without the lakefront operation, which CA is heavily involved in, and which I think has the biggest impact on the community, it wouldn't exist. And I say that just for been around a long time with that group. that it wouldn't exist if it was just putting on.
Steve, if you could wrap up because we have other questions as well.
Sure. I'm finished with that
Okay.
answer.
Okay, thanks. Ginny?
Yeah, Steve, thank you for your service, and I hope you move to a warmer climate. But thanks for all you've been doing in the county for many, many groups. Okay, quick question. You said something about, what? Yeah, said something about you were thinking about moving away from the lakefront because it could be cheaper. Are you actually paying CA to have, to be down at the lakefront?
No, it was the board, the group that had looked at that, and I think Scava was involved in it. They looked and said, if we move away and we have the same money from CA, it would allow us to save money in terms of all the programming and all at the lakefront. And Ann Stewart and I looked at it and we said that was a bogus assumption.
Okay. Second question. Could you let us know how much you are receiving from CA in terms of in-kind services?
I think Robert.
In addition to no rent for the lakefront, what other services?
I think that would best be answered by, Robert Marshall, because I'm not involved in the day-to-day things of that. I would,
I think Lakey can answer that question.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Thank
I know that the cash was 90 or 100.
No, I'm saying Lakey has raised her hand to answer that question.
Yeah.
So she'll be.
Yeah. This was asked at the last budget meeting, so I know Dennis looked into it. Dennis, can you confirm our income?
CA in-kind services for labor is about $15,000.
Thank you, Dennis.
Okay, any other questions for Steve? Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Appreciate the opportunity.
Okay, next up we have Allison Hickman.
Hello, everyone. I'm the current board chair of Columbia Festival of the Arts. I'll try to be brief as I know you're receiving a lot of valuable testimony and feedback on how to deploy Columbia Association resources in this budget cycle. And I'm following the excellent testimony of at least two former board chairs, Steve Sachs and Mary Kay Sigates. Columbia Association has been a sustaining partner of Columbia Festival of the Arts for 35 years, and we are so grateful for your continued partnership and support. It has been and continues to be essential to our success. An enduring and celebrated Columbia tradition entering its 35th year is Lakefest. With your partnership and support, annually we've enlivened and activated the lakefront space, engaging local families of all income levels and backgrounds, while programming a diverse set of artists from emerging to long established, representing the best in their craft. This year, with your continued support, we will again present Lakefest at the same high caliber the community has come to expect. The historical support of CA represents approximately 25% of the cost of producing Lakefest. Your dollars are used to directly invest in a large-scale, multi-day event that enlivens the community by bringing together local businesses, world-class arts performers, and artisans produced by highly qualified IATSE union members that year over year have been integral to ensuring the quality of the event. CA's continued financial support is absolutely critical for our ability to produce Lakefest at the scale and level of quality our community has come to expect. That operating support is essential and used for critical costs such as compensation to our performers, union members, and professional lighting and sound production costs. A Lakefest event is more important than ever as we continue to emerge from the global pandemic. It activates the lakefront space for all of Columbia, providing a free experience for residents at all income levels in an engaging and dynamic way as an entirely outside event. Thank you for providing this forum for comment and for your continued service to our community. Thank you for your consideration of continued support to Columbia Festival of the Arts.
Thank you, Allison. Any questions for Allison? Thank you for your testimony. Okay, next up we have Timothy Titus. Tim, are you on? Okay, I don't see him. So we will move on to Pravin Panuri.
Hi, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak. My name is Praveen Panuri, and I'm an Ellicott City resident. I'm here today representing Indian Origin Network of Howard County, also known as INHOCO. INHOCO has organized multiple events at the Chrysler Center for the community, and we would like to give a shout out to Ms. Nina Basu and the entire Inner Harbor Trust for their outstanding support in the past. I would also like to thank the Trust for helping the community showcase the cultural diversity that we all live in. I do understand that the last couple of years have been very hard on the entire community with the pandemic. And as we just start coming out of the pandemic, we need your support to bring a sense of normalcy back to the community by having more outdoor fun events. The Chrysler Center has been our go-to place in the past for large outdoor events, and we would like it to be the go-to place in the future post-pandemic. INHOCO and its 4,000 local members would like to request you to fund the Trust and the Chrysler Center to the maximum possible extent to help them bring out the diversity in the community and also help the community have a sense of normalcy in the post-pandemic era. Thank you for your time. Pending any questions, I rest my case.
Do we have any questions? Okay, thank you, Praveen.
Thank you.
Okay, next we have Nina Basu from Inner Harbor Trust. You're muted, Nina.
You would think 2 years into this, I would be better. So I apologize for not being able to run the technology this evening. Thank you very much for allowing me this opportunity to speak to you tonight. Nina Basu, President and CEO of the Inner Harbor Trust. I wanted to thank CA for including the trust at a portion of our request in the draft budget. I have received a number of questions from both folks on the CA board and otherwise about what specifically the operating needs are and those costs are for the Inner Harbor Trust operations. And I wanted to take this opportunity to just answer some of those questions. Specifically, the CA grant has typically been our opportunity to cover overhead costs that are associated with managing that piece of land. Our largest cost is typically insurance. That insurance amount is determined by the CA trust easement. It has been a little bit lower in the last 2 years because of the pandemic ending people being on the premises quite so often, but we're estimating that for next year that cost line will be in excess of $60,000. We've had some estimates as high as $70,000. In addition, that funding allows for the overhead pieces that nobody really wants to pay for, and that investment by CA allows the trust to be able to pivot and bring in additional funding for programming and to be able to utilize and earn income off of the space. Even in this pandemic year, the trust has earned to date $320,861 in earned income. Of course, that earned income also has costs along with it. We've been very lucky to be able to find partners who are willing to work with us, so we're able to earn income while providing great opportunities for the community. In addition to that, for this year to date, we have an estimated $520,000 of total grant funding, that the majority of which is actually used to do things like improve the land, the conservation landscaping that we put in over the summer. We just were awarded another grant for $44,000 from Chesapeake Bay Foundation that will result in additional trees being planted, as well as another large conservation installation going into Symphony Woods. there's obviously things like tree work. We work very closely with CA. CA has responsibility, joint responsibility for phase 1 and responsibility for phases 2, 3, and 4 of the easement. But I just wanted to answer sort of those larger questions about whether the money is going for programming and why we need the overhead. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have.
Thank you, Nina. Are there any questions for Nina? Jess?
Yeah, hey Nina. I'm just trying to get an update. When do you anticipate that we're going to be able to get those audited financials for the past 3 fiscal years before we vote on this budget?
So I just talked to Susan about this earlier today. We are going through our audit process. We did, of course, pretty much stop all operations. And we are going through our audit process. We're working on that field work, scheduling the field work. We were hoping to have the field work scheduled. Unfortunately, COVID is a reality, and they were having, and Lombardo Ayers canceled the field work. We're trying to schedule it. If it's, I don't think that we'll have it done by, I think you vote on the 24th, but certainly if you want to, it should be done shortly. I wish I had a crystal ball. Unfortunately, there's a lot of pieces that I can't control, but we would be more than happy. I mean, let me take that back. It should be done before the end of this fiscal year at the latest, and certainly, you know, those items could go in any sort of MOU that might exist.
I have a follow-up question, if you don't mind. Sure. Is it possible, since you guys are still undergoing your audit, is it possible to get the sort of unaudited, the draft financials?
Oh, absolutely.
So the board can review those?
Absolutely.
That would be helpful.
I'm more than happy to provide the unaudited financials. More than happy to provide, you know, we do like a P&L projection every so often for our board. We're more than happy to provide that. We actually used to provide the quarterly unaudited financials to CA. We were asked to stop doing that because they were unaudited. We would be more than happy to resume that practice.
Thank you.
And any other questions for Nina? Okay, thank you, Nina.
Thank you.
Okay, next up we have Kevin McAlley from Wild Lake and Howard EcoWorks and Bikoco.
Hello, Madam Chair. My name is Kevin McAlley, and I am requesting 3 separate 5-minute intervals for 3 different groups. Is that okay?
That is atypical.
I signed up online 3 different times.
Yeah. No, I see 3. Okay, I see. You signed up 3 times. Well, I guess that we can go with that then.
Yay! Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's so good to see so many of my friends and associates from all over the county. So thank you very much for this time. As the Vice Chair of Howard EcoWorks, I am collaborating. I am involved with a nonprofit organization. It's known for our green jobs. We are in a position where we have initiatives and workforce development in the environmental sector. We have crews of young adults seen working in stream management projects, tree plantings, conservation landscapes, and stream beds throughout the county. Most recently along Little Patuxent Parkway and Symphony Woods. You may have seen our bright neon t-shirts as we provided the conservation landscaping plantings to beautify the area with native plants grown in our own nursery at the Jessup Correction Facility. We actually trained the inmates how to do certain things and certify them for later work. We are partners with the Howard County Department of Public Works and the Office of Community Sustainability in the Safe and Sound Plan in Ellicott City and throughout the adjacent watersheds to clear debris and natural blockage that may cause potential flooding. We also have sustainable landscaping and stormwater mitigation projects in several HOA communities. Our collaboration with Inner Arbor Trust has been a perfect match because their open space is being stewarded, and it's crucial for Columbia residents to be able to make it more inviting for future visitors. Their community programming is very, very important to all of our clients and to our partners. We definitely support the Ann Arbor Trust request for 2023, their funding of $183,000. Also, Howard Eco Works has worked with CA in the past, and we would like to continue working together. We seek a meeting regarding possible collaboration with Columbia Association as a contractor for a number of services that include woodland management, native gardens, water quality monitoring, eco-design services, and a number of other open space and environmental services. Thank you very much. End of that segment.
I can take 5 minutes, so thank you for talking fast.
Sure,
do
sure.
you mind if you do all 3 and then we'll save questions until you're completed? Or would you prefer to take
No,
the
no,
question?
no. Let's do questions separately. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions on that one? Okay.
Great. I can officially change hats. Hello, my name is Kevin McAlilly, and I'm chair of the Wild Lake Village Board of Directors. It is great to have an amazing partner in my team member there, Tina Horn. Tina, thank you for just being an incredible partner, representing our interests, being such an active resident. We've worked together, everyone, you probably already know this, but we work together in our schools, our village center with our tenants, and we're definitely reaching out on a broader scale than we've ever done before. So thank you again, Tina, for the willingness to be a partner. We at Wild Lake have just a couple of items that we wanted to talk about. The first one, and I see John McCoy might be on here, but is the continuation of the stream management or restoration project that goes through Wild Lake. Most of you have probably heard from me before in the past on this, and so you're probably tired of hearing it, but our residents definitely are those that see what the progress has been through Harper's Choice and at Town Center on the stream mitigation project that flows into Wild Lake Pond or Wild Lake Lake, and then flows out of Wild Lake Lake and goes on into Lake Kittamaqundi. We'd like to have that segment between Harper's Choice and Town Center completed. At this point in time, if you didn't know, if you're new to the board, there is a segment of that particular stream that still continues to erode. It continues to feed sediment into the lake and is going to end up costing CA more money to dredge the lake because that particular piece is still hemorrhaging, so to speak. What we'd like to continue to see is the efforts that Mr. McCoy and Mr. Maddie, they have been working diligent with us for a few years now and trying to get that onto the books and into the budgets for planning. I believe at this point in time, it's just a matter of planning that has to be done. And then there are grants and things that can be applied for to do other things. And so if we can get, some employee time available so that there can be more concentration on this particular element, I sure would appreciate it. The other thing that we wanted to talk about is, let's see, we have several different activities getting ready to happen. This is our 55th year in existence, the first village in Columbia, Mr. Rouse's dream. And what we are doing now is trying to celebrate that. One of those activities will be on April 23rd. It coincides with our elections. We're going to have some of our tenants, our Wild Lake Cares environmental group. We're going to all be out in the courtyard, and we're going to be having a great time. We'll have the people coming in to do elections, and then we're also going to have lots and lots of activities outside. The other thing we wanted to bring up tonight is that we have a announcement. Just today, I was involved with a press conference with Dr. Ball, and we announced that all parts of Wild Lake are now going to be available for the Green Bin food scrap collection program. That had been something that village residents have been asking for some time. It's just a pleasure to have that in place. So all of our residents. If you're online and you're listening to us right now, go online at feedthegreenbin.org and go ahead and fill in the application. We'll get some information out to you, and we will definitely get that green bin to you. Let's see. The last thing is just thanks. I want to thank anybody and everybody at CA, staff, board members, the crews, especially construction crews, the people that maintain Slayton House and our village neighborhood centers. The crews have been fantastic. You've had a couple of years with COVID, and they are still doing just tremendous work, outstanding. They always have. They've been on call. They've been there when the air conditioning goes down or when there's the need for something to be fixed. And we just can't extend enough thanks for everything that you've done. All right, changing hats. Let me know when you're ready, Eric.
Any questions on Wild Lake section? All right.
Since it's
I have
through
one quick
different,
comment. I just wanted to mention, thank you for recognizing the staff. We will make sure that word gets to those teams, so appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Tina, do you have an actual question, or are you just going to sing through those? Tina, do you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to be, I wanted to reassure the board members that I did
No
not tell
questions
him
only,
that. I
please.
swear to God.
Okay, Kevin, next up.
All right. Thank you so much, Madam Chair. The last thing is I am vice president of a group called Bike HOCO. It's also known as Bicycle Advocates of Howard County. Our crew, our team has been very, very active in the bicycling projects throughout the county for several years now. One of those things has been the Complete Streets initiative. We have been very, very influential in implementing the Complete Streets plan. You'll see us handing out brochures, involved with social media, attending county meetings, etc., in support of bicycling activities. And that stretches over to pedestrian and also anybody that is using pathways and trails. And so we just want to thank CA for all that you do to make it possible for our members to be able to utilize those incredible trails. Every ounce of effort that's put into it is truly appreciated. Clearing the snow, after it snows, clearing the gutters that are clogged and making, certain areas unpassable. Also, any involvement that you have whatsoever in making any of the brand new trails that go along Little Patuxent Parkway and also along Twin Rivers Road in Wild Lake. Those master plan trails are just amazing. And if that's your group that's supporting those, thank you so much. We wanted to ask you about an Eagle Scout project that's coming up right now. I've been on calls with a Eagle Scout in the community, and he wants to put in a bicycle repair stand as his project. And we thought, oh, this is fantastic. That's right up our alley. Thing is, we've never actually put one in. It's always been someone else. And so since they've come to us, they've already been to the county. County referred them to us and said, oh, Kevin and his team are putting in bike rest stops throughout the county. Talk to them and maybe they can partner on that. The reason I'm bringing that up on this particular call is that I have been talking to Ian Kennedy and Nina Masu and Philip Dodge regarding possibly having a bike rest stop on the premises somewhere near the Chrysalis area, somewhere in Symphony Woods and Meriwether Park somewhere. And this particular Eagle Scout project would be perfect there. And I just want to make sure that you're familiar with that. And then also if you have any other projects similar to that an Eagle Scout could get involved in, the troop that I'm working with, they said they have lots of people that are looking for ways to participate. So I wanted to put that out there. There might be some funding involved, and we can talk about that a little later, but at this point, just wanted to talk about that. The other thing, and Eric, please let me know We're getting close. Bike corrals. Bike corrals, you guys at CA were fantastic during July 4th last year. You helped us and supported us tremendously on getting the bike corrals established. You helped us with signage. Your marketing team did a wonderful job, and we just want to thank you for that and let you know that we're planning on doing it again this year. We might even expand the program, and if anyone's asking what is a bike corral is a place where cyclists can come from whatever neighborhood they're in, whatever village they're in, follow the trails throughout the beautifully maintained areas and the pathways, and they will arrive at their destination, and there will be a special place just for bicycles to park. It's safe, it's manned. We have volunteers that volunteer through our program. We have bike racks that we will, well, they're fancier racks than that, but they will be locked up in there, and we will be very, we will make sure that everything's maintained until they get back. I wanted to make sure you knew we were doing that, and we'd like your help in finding other locations, especially near the village centers to put those. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any questions for Kevin? Eric?
Yeah, so I actually saw the Bike Coco plans, and one of the things that really excited me was the plan for Pass Up Cedar and the whole triangle loop around Cedar and Appleton. Do you have a status update on that? Because one of the great things is that would potentially connect River Hill.
Are you asking me, or are you asking somebody?
I was asking you if you do anything about those plans.
I do not. Thank you.
Sorry.
Tina?
I wanted to make sure I did not misunderstand. Did you say a bike repair stop that the Eagles was working on, or a bike rest stop?
I'm using those interchangeably at a certain point, but there are two different words. The first is a bike rest stop, a place where people can stop and get either water, fill their water bottles, use the restroom, an outhouse or something, and also has the ability to sit at a picnic table or a bench, get out of the sun, maybe under a tree. That would be a bike rest stop. And we just completed one at the front of the Community Ecology Institute on Harriet Tubman Lane in Hickory Ridge. And that's a phenomenal one. If you ever go by there, that's something that Race Pace Bikes supported. So that's a bike rest stop. A bike repair stand or bike repair whatever station is basically a couple of tubes or a couple of poles coming out of the ground. They're stationary and mounted in concrete. And one is tools are connected to it with wires or some kind of chain, and there will be a wrench there and the ability to unscrew and screw things. And then the second one is an actual air pump that is down into the ground, and it's available there, but there is a pump available so that you can fill your tires on it. That's a bike repair station. You put those two together and you've got a really nice bike rest stop. But just that one repair station is what we're looking at right this second with this Eagle Scout. That's all his job is to try to get just the repair station in the ground.
Jenny?
Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin, thank you so much. Seem to be getting some feedback here. Thank you so much for all you're doing and what you did last year on the bike corral. Rebecca and Warren.
Will we please stick to questions?
Yeah, help you again. And I guess my question is, have you considered the Chrysalis area for both of those, the bike rest stop and the repair near the restrooms? I don't know.
Actually, that's not a bad idea. Absolutely. We would love to do that. Is CA involved in helping us do that?
You have to ask what?
Ask who?
I assume you would be working with Dennis and Lakely on that, but it just seemed like that might be one of the ideal locations.
Ooh, Lakey, she just volunteered you. Did you see that? Thanks, Jenny.
I can't speak for the trust, but I can say that as a crossover trust board member, my understanding is that bike rest stop is already in progress. So I can't speak to the details of it, but certainly we're open to having a conversation about that, Kevin.
Fantastic. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Thank you, Kevin, and I apologize for mispronouncing your last name.
You did?
Next
I
time
missed it. Thank you. Take
Well,
care,
good. I'm
guys.
glad you didn't notice. Sorry, I called myself out.
We're all friends. No problem.
All right. Speaking of mispronouncing names, Tomiwa, is that how you say your name? I apologize in advance for not saying it correctly if that's not.
Tomiwa is great.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. You're up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. I would be speaking at this resident speak out on behalf of the Columbia Festival for the Arts. I have lived in Columbia for over 14 years, was an HOA president. I'm still a residential property owner in Columbia and a business tenant, all in properties that pay CA dues. I'm here on behalf of the Columbia Festival of the Arts to ask for your continued support of $100,000 or more to sustain our stellar delivery of the Columbia Festival of the Arts Lake Fest. As a proud parent of 2 children who were born and raised in Columbia, I have visited and thoroughly enjoyed more than a few Columbia Festival of the Arts Lake Fest events and have even introduced visitors from other countries in Europe, England, Belgium, Germany, to be specific, to Lake Fest on more than one occasion. The last one that included the Architects of Air was one of my most memorable, and I am told it had anywhere from 30 to 50,000 people come to share what Columbia had to offer. The Rouse vision opines that the only valid ultimate purpose of any civilization is to grow better people, more creative, more productive, more inspired, more loving people. This is embodied in the events created and directed by the Columbia Festival of the Arts, and your tangible support is critical in ensuring that our residents and visitors continue to be impacted by the positive, creative, diverse, and productive examples of what can be versus status quo. I appreciate your time, but would appreciate your donations, your contributions, and actions even more. It is worth reminding everyone that Lake Fest is completely free to the public. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Okay. Thank you, Tomiwa. Okay, next up we have Tim Titus. Tim, you're up, but you're muted. So I don't know if you're on a laptop, but on my laptop, the microphone icon is on the bottom on the left with all the little circles.
Okay, there we go. Can you see me and hear me?
Well, I can't see you, but my internet's being a little wonky tonight, but I can hear you, so I think that's the important. Oh, but now you just muted again.
Okay.
Okay, now you're good.
I'm sorry about this. I felt like Dustin Hoffman in The Graduate beating on the glass, and saying, hey, my limitations. I want to speak tonight as a resident in support of the Lake Elkhorn remediation project. I've lived in Long Reach for over 40 years on Eagle Beak Row, and I know that stretch of stream from High Tor Hill down to Jackson Pond. I know the path, I know the stream. The erosion and fast-moving water is hurting all the open space. This project is needed, and it is carefully studied and well documented. Over the years, CA has performed several projects to slow the flow of the stream and reduce the sediment. This project is the latest one in that set of projects. Now, some have expressed reservations about the impact of the proposed project, and I want to assure you that my observations over the years would say that those concerns are ill-founded. This thing is well planned and executed. Many expert studies and surveys inform the project, like GPS mapping, forest surveys, and engineering studies. The design is under review by CA, state, and federal agencies, and I think that's important. And the interagency research team is a blue ribbon panel of experts that will see the project through over its many phases. I've been impressed with how CA has been responsibly working on these projects. They use path access and a mulch blanket to minimize any impact on the surrounding areas. And they carefully select staging sites to reduce the impact, and they clean up and reseed afterwards. It's been an impressive job. The forest inventories help reduce the need to remove trees, which is going to be minimal, and slowing the flow reduces the accumulation of sediment. Those who allege that there is no sediment need only look at the CA budget outlays for dredging in the Elkhorn watershed to dispel that notion. Now, there's no question that projects like these cause short-term disruption and inconvenience. I liken that to when I renovated my kitchen. I lived with short-term disruption and inconvenience, but the long-term project was worth it, and it was an important improvement. While this project does not address everything that could be done, it is a bold start in the right direction.
30 seconds.
We should be careful not to pause until we have a perfect solution and let a good solution languish. This project addresses the needs to repair and renew the stormwater infrastructure here in Long Reach. We should move ahead with this project, and thank you for your patience.
Thank you, Tim. Do we have any questions? Okay, appreciate you coming out tonight, Tim. Okay, and last up, we have Richard Bannister. Richard, you have 3 minutes because Amy already spoke on behalf of the organization. Do we have Richard with us? Okay, it looks like we do not. So that will conclude our resident speak out. Okay, next we move on to our work session topics. First up, we have the fiscal year 23 budgets. Lakey, did you want to kick us off?
Yes, happy to. So we prepared a very quick, or rather short, summary. I'm sharing my screen. Can everyone see that? Yes. Okay. So this is really just a recap of what was in the board packet, a shorter version. More details is in the board packet, but wanted to highlight what we as staff saw as the outstanding items from our last budget discussion to report back on to the board. So first, we did conclude the survey, and we provided more detail that day, but wanted to just quickly recap that. So as a reminder, we did have a phase 1 already earlier in the process that had over 450 responses. And so in this one, phase 2, which ran January 21st to January 31st, we had 380 responses. Interestingly, nearly 70% actually indicated this was their first time they had ever participated in the CA budget process. So that certainly seemed to be a very solid indication that we are reaching people that had not previously participated. This round, just as a reminder, because of where we are in the budget process, was really focused on more so ranking and prioritizing the items that were in the draft budget, very specifically around kind of key operational pieces and then key capital projects. So as a quick recap, what you see listed on the left side were the 8 key operational factors that we highlighted and asked people to rank simply from 1 to 8. And we selected this list, and everyone here has actually reviewed the thorough full budget, but we selected this list based on kind of key discussion items, what have been identified by residents as key priorities. So you can see on the right in the green, in the highest rankings, it was very much the idea of having widespread accessibility to programs and services, as well as open space and lake maintenance funding being prioritized and returning to pre-COVID levels. Out of this list, the lowest rankings, so again, more so people that were ranking at 7th or 8th, were kind of the communications and doing more around multimedia and engagement. There were 43% relatively low ranking on diversity, equity, and inclusion resources and really making sure they're dedicated, as well as 30% ranking opening all 23 pools as a ranking 7 or 8 out of these options. So again, just kind of summarizing what we heard from the people that participated. And then a similar kind of exercise on the capital projects. So left-hand side were the capital projects that we called out as kind of key ones that had gotten a lot of discussion or had, significant line items. And in this one, there was a far and away focus and priority on the pathway, bridge, and boardwalk renovations and replacement work. And then about half ranked the Going Green, which is a lot of the environmental stewardship, which also includes energy, retrofits, that kind of thing, as very high ranking. So again, you have a more detailed summary memo. Just wanted to make sure to report that back to the board and out to the community. So otherwise, there were really two key pieces that we felt as staff, and when we ended our last board meeting, we were in agreement that these were the follow-up items, were some additional information, not really an action item, but additional information around Stonehouse and Art Center renovations, and then both additional information, and you requested a staff recommendation around the 6 Pence hot lot. So I'm going to turn it over to Dennis Maddie to kind of walk us through these highlights. Again, more details in your board packet. So Dennis?
Yes, there are some jobs that just seem to take forever, and the Stonehouse Art Center job has just seemed to take forever. First, we waited on the county and the revitalization of that center, and then COVID got in the way. Now we did a lot of work during that period. We spent about $500,000 on a roof replacement and HVAC, but we have restarted. We met with Liz and Tina 2 weeks ago now and went through the program. We were scheduled to meet with the village board this week ahead of this meeting, but that meeting got canceled. We're going to start the work on the Stonehouse side. But let me back up and say first that the meeting with Tina and Liz was incredible in that it's the Village Association and CA, and they feel like they're sisters. And so when we had that conversation, they talked about how they could work together, how they could come in the building while work is going on one side. So I think that what could have been a problem, they have worked out amongst themselves. And so it's really terrific to see that energy together. We're hoping to start this spring, and when I say hoping, it's dependent on permitting. And what's interesting about this job is that we think of it as two separate buildings. They are joined, but the water comes in on one side on one building, and the electric and gas come in on another side. In addition to which, we are planning to install a sprinkler system, which calls for a new water system for both buildings. And then there's the elevator. So this, although it's focusing in the spring on Stonehouse, the improvements are related to both buildings. The elevator is going to serve a common lobby and serve both buildings, but we're going to focus on Stonehouse first, permit pending, and then the next year we're going to focus on the Art Center. That's phase one is Stonehouse and then some common work. Phase two is really just the Art Center. And then phase three is in the future when the county and whatever refurbishment revitalization work takes place in that center actually get started. It doesn't make sense to reskin the building without understanding what else might happen in that center. So the work we're going to do for now is going to focus on first on what I call base building, which is ADA and life safety improvements, sprinkler, fire alarm, and aesthetics, and then later on the exterior of the building. Any questions on that? Okay, moving on to Sixpence. We were planning to, I think we reached out to the village board in June or May or June of last year. And the discussion was to install, we were planning to install a rascal. We were ready to install that rascal last year. Well, the rascal is the actual tot lot. But they thought there was a bigger tot lot that was already there. They wanted more than just that rascal, which fit within the policy. They did a survey. There were 3 options. The rascal fits in the policy. That's about $85,000. There was something called a forget-me-not, which was about $110,000, and there was something called a twin towers, and that was $195,000. Now, I want to say that the prices are changing, and they've changed since we first started this process, and they haven't gone down. They've gone up, and the lead times have gotten longer. Right now, we think the lead time for the twin towers is going to be 5 to 6 months. And that's based on what I know today. When I finally place the order and hard bid that equipment, I'll know better what the price is. But right now, it looks like it's about a $110,000 upgrade over the rascal. And it looks like from the time we order it, it's 5 to 6 months out as of today, although we would be ready to install it as soon as it comes in. Staff's recommendation, or staff took a look at what funding might be available. We don't recommend reducing the Category 2 or Category 3 funds. We took a look at some unused, and actually it was Laura Parrish's recommendation from Hickory Ridge as the village manager. We took a look at some funds that had not been used. They were set aside in FY 14-15 for the Hickory Ridge Village Center planning and improvements that were never used. And there is about $200,000 remaining balance in that in those 2 accounts. And our recommendation is that we use those funds to augment the existing Category 3 allocation for a Sixpence tot lot. And we think right now that is about $110,000, but that is an approximate number today until I actually have a hard bid number from the supplier. And so what we're asking the board to do is to allow staff to use the remaining balance, or up to $125,000, and we'll bid it and get the best price possible. I just can't say today if it's $110,000 or $111,000, and it would make it take even longer if it was just $1,000 over if I didn't have that flexibility. So I'll open up to any questions.
Dick?
Yes, I visited the Sixpence tot lot after hearing so much about it. The old structure is still there. It's a wooden structure. Looks very nice. I saw a little bit of rot in one post. I couldn't climb up on it because you got it all boarded off, and I'm getting a little old for that sort of thing. Should have brought one of my boys with me. But wondering, can it be repaired? It looks pretty, I mean, to my untrained eye, it looked pretty solid. And it's a very attractive piece. I like the old wooden structure like that. Can it be fixed?
No. So I before we shut it down, I climbed up on top, and I have some pictures of rot that you can see from the top down. So those pilings are rotten from in the center down, above, and they're also rotten below. So no, it really can't be repaired.
Okay, thank you.
Eric?
Yeah, a question on the 110K from the existing account. What was that 110K allocated for? Is it just no longer relevant just sitting around, or is
It
that
was
taken away
for-
from something else?
It was for an amenity that was, the CA was waiting on Kimco to finalize their plans for the village center. And after those plans were finalized, CA would place an amenity in the village center. And of course, that's taken a couple years longer than expected, and likely will take 3 to 5 more years before an amenity would be ready to go in there.
So if we took the money out of the account and then 3 or 4 years later they revamped the village center, would we have to put that money back into the account to build the amenity?
If you put an amenity, if you decided you wanted to put an amenity there, yes, you'd have to fund it. Yes.
So that's basically where it's coming from. Okay, thanks.
So I'm up next. I just wanted to say, initially I was struggling a little bit, not because I don't want the community to have this tot lot, but because I think we as a board make policies and then ignore them later. And so I was struggling a little bit with, the fact that the board had recently approved this tot lot policy. But as I thought about it more, I realized that a number of villages do have these larger tot lots, like, there's one at Stevens Forest, there's one at Jackson Pond and Long Reach. And so I wonder if really we need to take a look at our tot lot policy for like 2 tiers, so like, I think it does seem fair that if there's a large community amenity, and, I haven't seen this tot lot, I will admit. So, but that we need to sort of think differently about some of these more robust, like, I'm going to call it a playground because I think that's a differentiator, right? Like a tot lot versus a playground. Because I think they are generally in areas that are pretty well utilized. So anyway, I'm just throwing that out there in terms of, I'd like us as a board to be consistent in how we apply policies. And I mean, I blame myself on this one because I was the one suggesting that the environmental money could potentially be used. And then I rethought that one as well. So, I mean, I think, I just want us as a board to be consistent, but I also recognize the fact that sometimes when we put a policy in place, different things come up after the fact that, may have us have to revisit and take a second look. So. Okay, Sherry, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. Dennis, are there other tot lots in Hickory Ridge that are also due to be renovated?
There are, I don't know that we have any in Hickory Ridge. There are other tot lots in the system that are due to be renovated, but I don't think I have any that are, except for Six Pence. Six Pence is the only tot lot that's fully closed right now. I have some tot lots with swings that are down, but no fully closed tot lots.
All right, I had a question about that. When you say fully closed off, I was over there, took a walk over there, took a look at the site, and it seems the only thing that's not usable is the climbing structure because CA put up plywood boards to keep kids off of the slides. The swings were open. The benches look like they're in great condition. The sandbox was fine. The brick was good. I didn't see anything. I was concerned from an environmental perspective that the site backs up very, very close to a major stream. I saw some ducks out there when I was there, floating down. And it seems to me that probably with the tree canopy, it's heavily wooded. With the tree canopy, that's probably a very, very moist site, more so than many other tot lots. So I wonder if that has, number one, an impact on what we put up there. And number two, the other thing I noted is that when you walk down that path and just go a little ways, you're at Clemens Crossing Elementary School, and Clemens Crossing has 2 playgrounds. One that is for younger kids, and one that is specifically designated for 5 to 12-year-olds. Those playgrounds, those are not CA. Those were probably put up by the county. Is that correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Jess?
Yeah, two things. One, I just kind of wanted to provide a little context around the whole money at the Hickory Ridge Village Center. So, I mean, the way you just described it is pretty accurate. This was kind of a project that came up. This was when I was village manager, that the board really wanted to have some sort of CA presence at the Hickory Ridge Village Center, because we are one of the village centers that does not have any physical CA presence at it. And so there is a parcel of land there, and the idea was to develop it into a park. And so that money that was put aside was for design and planning. And then the idea was the first year would be design and planning, and then there would be money put in the budget for whatever construction there was. But we never got to design and planning because then Kimco announced that they were renovating the village center, and so everything went on pause. And now, you know, we really have no idea when that's going to be resolved. Just so you know, I did talk to Laura about it, and she did send an email to the current village board, who honestly I don't think was even aware of that funding that was there, because all the people who were originally involved in that project have now moved off the board. And so I do think that that could be a really fabulous solution for this. But I also agree with Janet that I think we do need to look at something in that tot lot policy for how do we handle unique, you know, tot lots. Like there's one in Wild Lake that's built with like some ruins in it, you know, that there are sort of your standard tot lots, and then there are these oddball tot lots or extra large ones. So I do think that's a good idea to revisit. And then lastly, to Shar's comment, I just wanted to note, you mentioned the playgrounds at Clemens Crossing. One of the challenges with that is that they are not open to the public during the school day. So, you know, the kids who are not attending Clemens Crossing can't use those playgrounds during the day. And there are times when they're not usable outside as well. And truthfully, there's enough demand around that school to use a larger playground at Sixpence for sure.
Thanks. Lynn?
Yeah, didn't the board a couple of years ago talk about doing a tot lot survey, a Columbia-wide?
I believe the Dennis's staff did a tot lot survey, and that was part of what, you know, based on the number and condition of tot lots. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you know, just because so many things have been changing lately. Blandair Park is open. There's the big playground at Centennial. There are these larger playgrounds, and not just Columbia playgrounds. They're county playgrounds. There are areas around, and what I'm noticing, both with like my grandchildren, is they will go there rather than do anything smaller and more local. So that what we dealt with in the tot lots in the 70s and the 80s, you know, we're reproducing a lot of them now, and is that what we should be doing? You know, again, it would make more sense, I think, to look at this very holistically and really with the county and what other things are around that are, you know, people are using more. How many more how many more tot lots do we need? Do we need less? If we put a bigger one here at Sixpence, does the smaller one down the path? I too walked it, and does that smaller one down the path? Does anybody use that? I mean, how do we deal with this systemic, you know, system-wide?
Dennis, do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, so the tot lot policy that was approved creates a sustainable long-term tot lot policy. reduces the cost of the tot lot program. And from my perspective, we found during COVID, I was out in the open space more. I too thought that they were underutilized. I had that in my mind that no one used the tot lots. But as we've gotten out, it's remarkable how many people use the tot lots. And I've always thought that that just wasn't the case. But what we have found is there are people using the tot lots. If we have a sustainable program for them, and as a parent, you can walk your tot, down the pathway somewhere close, put them on a swing. It doesn't want to be a regional playground. It doesn't want to be Blandair Park, which that playground was $1 million. And that's just for the equipment. That's not the play surface. That's not the grading. It's $1 million just for that equipment. So what we're doing is a far cry from what they have done there.
Yeah, that's not what I meant. I mean, we also use Blandair. It's like it's a Columbia. It's accessible to Columbians, and lots of Columbians use it. It's just what are the ages of the tots that use the tot lots? Usually, I see them 3, 4, 5, 6. You sort of top out around 6. 7-year-olds, an 8-year-old might not want to go near it. So you're really dealing, I think, with the younger ages in the smaller size tot lots. I don't. Are they serving 10, 11, 12-year-olds, middle school kids?
Yeah,
I haven't seen that. No,
Did you want to comment on that one?
The tot lots are designed for kids between the ages of 2 and 5. The equipment at 6 pence would be for ages 2 through 10, would be for older children. So that would serve a different age group. But the tot lots and so let's call them the special tot lots. There are what we think are 11 of them that fall outside of the normal tot lot policy. And those would be looked at differently. Stevens Forest has one, Faulkner Ridge, so they're around town, but out of the 170, there's only 11 that fall into that category, and this is one of those 11. I think that I was skeptical. I didn't think the tot lots were well used, but I have found them to be well used, and parents like them. And if we can craft a sustainable program, and we don't go in and do 30 6 pence tot lots or 30 Stevens Forest tot lots, I think they have a future in Columbia.
Lakey, did you want to comment on that, or do you just want to get in the queue? Okay, go ahead then.
Sorry, yes, I just wanted to quickly note, I was trying to find it as everyone was talking. I just wanted to remind everyone that we did Dennis's team, Nick Mooneyham, did a very thorough presentation on this back in July, and I'm happy to recirculate the packet that he provided, but we did a full inventory. I'm sharing my screen. We did the mapping, including Howard County, including the elementary schools. We talked about the differences. We went through where they were throughout the community. We talked about what we do normally. We went through the age ranges, where the challenges were, and then ended on what this body approved. We did the walk sheds on how we were going to use an objective process for making those changes going forward. So I just wanted to make sure everybody remembered that we had done that in July of 2021.
Thank you, Lakey. Eric, you're up.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that residents moved to Columbia because of the tot lots. They love the tot lots, and that's why people buy houses here. It's one of the reasons why they pay the annual charge. But I did want to make sure that we implement the tot lot policy equitably across all the villages. I know River Hill, we've got one slightly larger tot lot, but we don't have any playgrounds like Hickory Ridge has, Hawthorne, and some other playgrounds. But I just want to make sure that we're pursuing this in an equitable manner across all the villages.
Thank you. Andy?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I do thank staff for the research and the recommendations. And I do really think it's a good idea to repurpose those funds that are set aside for the Hickory Ridge Village amenity for this tot lot. It's a very good use of the money, and frankly, the current amenity was designed almost 10 years ago. And it's not clear once the village center does get redeveloped that that type of amenity is still the desired thing from the village. And in that sense, we'd have to start almost over again because it's been so long since this process. So I really think it's a good idea to repurpose those funds. And in the future, when Hickory Ridge Village Center does finally get redeveloped, then we may have a much better understanding of what type of amenity we can put in there. So I want to thank staff for that idea.
Thank you, Andy. Ginny?
I was just, my chair of my board just called, and he doesn't understand why Stevens Forest is being referred to as a playground. It has a swing and a slide. And something that's been, so where's the playground that we're talking about at Stevens Forest? I think people are confusing the pool, the neighborhood center, the pond way down, you know, and the Stevens Forest Elementary School. Some facilities there like basketball courts, but Stevens Forest tot lot is a tot lot. So I guess my concern is we have a tot lot policy. We should abide by it. Two, if we want to look at a new policy on playgrounds, let's do that. Let's come up with something that will be equitable for all the villages. Let all the villages say what they think they need in terms of a playground. CAL advises what they think is a playground. And let's look at what's surrounding that area to see if there are county or other facilities, so it really is duplicating or not duplicating effort. But let's do this in a systematic way, not just suddenly one village might get more than somebody else. I just don't think it's fair. And I guess the other thing is there was a budget here for 2021, I thought, and you said, Dennis, but the village chose not to spend that money on rehabbing it. But I'm also hearing there are facilities there on the tot lot. It's not like it's vacant. And I was led to believe in the last meeting that there was nothing on there. But it sounds like there are things that are there already. So I just don't see that we should be jumping ahead when we don't have a system in place, because then you'll have every other village saying, me too, or why aren't you repairing my tot lots? Use that money for my tot lots that have been waiting a long time. That's what we're hearing. And that's just not fair to all the other villages, quite frankly. And I understand that you know, there's a wooden thing apparently was an exception, but what I'm also hearing is you can't do that again because of one location, two, the wood, etc. So, which is sad, but thank you.
I believe Dennis had a response to that.
What makes Stevens Forest special is, and the cost is it's an ADA accessible tot lot or playground tot lot, but the play surface there is much more expensive than would fit into the tot lot policy. So that tot lot would be a special tot lot because of the cost to replace it. It would still be a tot lot, but it wouldn't fall into the $85,000 category to replace. If we,
but it's the tot lot. It is not a playground, correct, Dennis?
Correct.
All right. So I've heard it was called a playground. I'm just trying to correct that. It is not.
Correct.
Sorry, Jenny, I called it a playground.
It's okay. I just don't want to mislead people that it's a grand thing or something like that. Thank you.
I'm misremembering it then because my kids must have been small when they played on it because it seemed very big.
Yeah.
I think just the play surface was $200,000. So it's incredibly expensive, but it is ADA accessible. And the other, just as a point of fact, is that the the swings will have to come out. The fall zones around equipment has gotten much larger, so that even putting in the twin towers, which is a smaller footprint, that we're going to have to move equipment around to make that work. So we basically start from scratch, put the twin towers in, and relocate the swings.
Okay, Dennis, one other thing my chairman is saying.
You have
One piece
15
of equipment
seconds.
has been broken for years, a metal pole running between two posts, and nothing's been done for years. So I just want to explain the status of that. We could use the money too. So I think we've got to be fair about this and let it go through a budget process as to what we do with playgrounds. Thank you.
Jess?
Yeah, I just wanted to remind the board, and Dennis, maybe I have a question for you or Lakey. If this is money that is already sort of on hold for this project in Hickory Ridge, how would that work in terms of, the capital budget? Does it add money to the capital budget and move it from somewhere else? Or is it just, what kind of action would the board need to take in order for that money to be repurposed?
Susan, do you want to field that one since it was prior year allocated?
Yeah, so those funds were a capital project that was approved by a previous board. So in order to do something different with them, and this board would need to approve that change. It does not increase the capital budget. That's already been budgeted. It was part of the capital budget in 2014 and 2015. And that's one reason why we liked it as well, that idea.
Yeah, so it doesn't take money from any other tot lot. It doesn't, take money from, as I understand it, the way it's being explained, that it's money that was going to be used for one project that will now be used for something else. And frankly, that project was proposed so long ago and probably is not necessarily relevant at this point. So yeah, I just want to reassure everyone that, by taking this money that was set aside for a Hickory Ridge project and using it for this, it is not going to, as I see it, cause any damage to any other village or, any other tot lot or amenity, as I understand it.
Right. That's correct.
Okay.
Tina?
I want to, Dennis, I heard you say something that I didn't understand and wanted to just ask for some clarification. Are all of the tot lots then not ADA compliant or ADA accessible?
Correct. So Barry, if you can picture that in your mind, some of these structures are 30 years old. What's interesting is the older wood is a lot better than the new wood. So we'll have some structures that are 35 years old that are in great shape. And then I've got something that's 7 years old that's fallen apart. And so, and even when,
because of the chemicals. But the question was about ADA compliance.
So they're not all, I'd have to get back to an exact number, but maybe 10 are fully compliant. And by that, I mean the play surface and every piece of equipment. And also the access to the tot lots. So if you, so Stevens Forest is some of these tot lots are kind of down in a hole, and they don't come close to meeting the fall on the pathway.
Okay, thank you. That's also
I just want to remind the board
concern.
I'd like to remind the board that we have 1 hour to discuss this and we have taken 3/4 of it. So if there are other topics on the budget that you would like to raise, then please do that and let's move on. Eric?
Yeah, I got a general question. How many other of these orphan capital projects are there that just have money lying around, or just the only one?
So there are other projects that I don't have the number, but we report that every single quarter in multiple ways in our financial reports. of the number of projects that haven't started yet, and for various reasons. And that one's an obvious one. And that was documented in previous budget conversations with previous boards that project would be on hold until the revitalization activity in the village was clearer.
Sherry?
I had in my notes of our previous tot lot policy discussion that we were going to, that staff was going to look at developing criteria. I think Janet was alluding to this when you were talking about different kinds of tot lots, some being larger, some being more like playgrounds, others not being. And so far the only criteria that I saw was the 85,000 per tot lot without any description of how large or small that might be. There were 8 metal structures that had been installed so far in other communities that were the ones that were recommended by staff that meet that criteria. That you would be looking at tot lots that were more secluded, or that there was a 10-minute walk kind of criteria that was put out there. Those are the only, so far, those are the 4 that I remember. And I was going to ask you whether we need to include some kind of environmental criteria. As we were talking about tot lots that are in a bowl, or that are like this one right up against a stream with no barrier. And again, I've been working with the watershed committee for so long. I'm focused on flooding and things of that kind, but certainly, things that are located in a floodplain, maybe we need to take a look at that as well, as far as criteria are concerned. So I'm a little concerned about moving ahead on anything until we really develop the criteria. My notes suggest that we were going to try to look at this in September, but that didn't happen. So I think maybe we can be thinking about what some of these other criteria might be, because as Lynn was saying, we do need to look at it in a systemic way. It's not just replacing what was there before because it was there 40 or 50 years ago. It's what do we need to replace, and how can we make it sustainable for the next 25 years? I think 10 years for a tot lot is a very short period of time to invest the kinds of funds that we're talking about. So I would like us to expand our sustainability perspective, maybe just a little bit further.
Mm-hmm.
So there are some criteria up on the screen.
I was just, because I had it open from earlier, this was the criteria that was already approved. The criteria to come back with was the add, subtract, enhance. But Sherry, as you were referencing, this was what we already included and what was approved by the board in July. And environmental impact is listed. I was just going to highlight that since I had it open.
Thank you. Okay, I don't see anyone else in the queue. Are there other questions? So I just want to remind everyone, speak now or forever hold your peace. There won't be changes after, well, we hopefully won't have changes tonight either, but I mean, we have these couple of outstanding issues, but ideally, this is it. So if you have anything that you'd like to address, now is your chance. Otherwise, this is the budget that we will be voting on in the next meeting. Jenny?
Could you clarify that? My understanding of the budget for tot lots is about $511,000 period, that there's no additional money to be spent on tot lots. So if that's what you're saying, okay. If you're saying that what staff has put in here as a possible add to one, I don't think that's part of the budget that we're considering. So I'm not clear on whether we need a vote on this or not. What exactly
The
are?
tot lot budget remains the same.
Okay.
It
And
would use those additional funds that are allocated elsewhere.
for that.
So when we vote on this budget next meeting, we will be voting on staff recommendation to use those funds.
Oh, okay. So in that case, that makes it more difficult. We really should be voting tonight on whether we agree with that staff recommendation or not. Is that correct? Because you're saying use up to 200,000 of what was allocated. So if there's an appeal by Kimco and they win, you're going to need that money for the village center. But you're saying that it's assumed that that is now a done deal in the budget. So we would be facing the whole budget. Right now, we should make a decision whether we agree with that staff recommendation or not, shouldn't we? So it doesn't drag on.
Susan and then Andy.
So you would need to, you can vote on the budget and should vote on the budget regardless.
Yeah.
And then it would be a separate motion and for changing the use of those previously approved funds to be used for that tot lot. So it would be two different decisions, as I understand it. Then the board's done that previously.
Yeah, thank you for that reminder, Susan.
So you're saying you don't want us to vote on it tonight?
So we'll be voting on it. The question will be, I mean, because the thing is those funds do not change this budget.
I know.
So we can vote on those funds separately without acting this budget.
When do you see we'd be voting on it then? I mean, it's an important principle about whether we keep tot lot policy and then develop a new policy for playgrounds or not. Just to be fair with everybody. So
I would see that as a separate vote in the next meeting. Andy and then Lakey. Did Andy just hang up? Oh no, Andy, are you there?
Yep, sorry, forgot the. I just wanted to say that because staff's recommendation is to reprogram money that's already been approved in the capital budget, there's no impact at all on the proposed fiscal year 2023 budget. So everything is just as staff has recommended, and as I think, Susan and Janet have said, you can approve the budget, but approving the budget doesn't impact reprogramming funds. You have to do that with a separate vote. And so we can vote, and that can be a vote at the next meeting, can be a vote at any meeting, because these things have been done before where staff has come back to us and said, can we reprogram certain funds? And they've brought it to the board, and then the board has decided yes or no. So this falls in the same category as that. This is a reprogramming of current capital budget funds. So it doesn't really impact the fiscal year 2023 budget. Thanks.
Thank you, Andy. And you raise a good point that if we wanted to have further discussion around it, it would not have to happen because it doesn't impact the budget. It would not have to happen next meeting, but we can figure that out. Lakey?
I think the process has been covered. The only other point I was going to make was the idea that we, at the staff recommendation, what we had been asked at the last budget discussion was there was a desire to move the idea of doing an expanded outlot as Twin Towers. And so staff was charged with how would you source that fund, give us multiple options. And so that is what we attempted to do in the memo that we provided, and there's more than one way to do it, but our recommendation was to use this other money for the reasons that were highlighted. That does not impact the budget, does not take away from another tot lot in the current budget, or reduce the category 2 projects. But I do think it is important to state that in essence, the tot lot policy has worked, so to speak, in that this tot lot is not in the approved $85,000 model. And so what that means is it has to be pulled out and be approved as a separate project. And so that is what is happening. It just happens to be aligning with this budget process. So I think the voting process has been highlighted. I just wanted to clarify that our direction was, if this goes forward, what are the options to fund it? And that is why we went and tried to find some creative ways to fund it.
Thank you. Tina?
May I ask not a non-tot lot question?
Please.
I do not have as much history with CA budgets as many of the rest of us, or many of the rest of you do. So I don't know this information, and I would value having it. How regularly does CA plan a deficit budget? And I think that's a Susan question, but I'm not.
CA never plans a deficit budget, or hasn't since, I don't know what, the maybe mid-90s, early 90s, before I came to CA. There hasn't been a deficit budget. Many decades.
Thank you.
Sherry?
Yeah, I think it is confusing for folks, since we were talking about expanding the capital budget this year. And I think Andy brought that up, and then we established parameters around it. To understand how a project that was approved and money was set aside in 14 and 15 is moved forward into a different budget. And so people have asked me, well, is there just money sitting for whatever projects have been approved by the board? So Susan, could you maybe just explain that a little bit?
So once a project is, that project has been approved, was approved, or there were a couple projects years ago. And once a board budget is approved, then we don't change it, right? So CA wouldn't change it, or the staff wouldn't change it. And if we were going to ask for a change, we come to the board and ask them to make a change, which is what we're recommending in this case. But it doesn't, and then we plan out the cash flow based on when we think the projects are going to start or what's going to happen. What are the delays in construction? When would we get a permit and all that stuff? So the cash flow planning takes into account all of those old projects or the previously approved projects and when we think they'll occur. So the budget is not being changed, as you noted. You were right. We're not recommending any increase to the 2023 capital budget. We're not recommending any increase to the 2014 capital budget. We're just recommending that the funds be used for a different purpose.
I think the one piece of that, Susan, that that Sherry asked was, is that money sitting someplace? Like,
So
like
no, we
what
do
do
not
we do with
reserve the
money?
cash. There's not a fund for all those projects, and you know that well, right? Because we didn't have a cash reserve fund until just last year. So no, certainly not. Those funds are not sitting somewhere. So this is all part of the cash flow projections that we do to evaluate those. To
All right, so
plan
that's
those.
so that's just a good follow-up just to make sure. So these funds are not coming out of cash reserves.
No.
There are other approved but not spent projects that have also been approved by the board that are sort of stacked up like plans at Kennedy from previous years.
Well, there's a lot of watershed dollars that are still unspent because of the long lead time in planning and permitting those projects.
Right.
There are other projects in 2020. The capital budget was approved before the pandemic. We put a hold on all of those. We have projects from 21 we haven't spent for conservative reasons. So there's and none of that's new. None of this is a new process, new practice, new nothing. This has been just the way that the organization has managed to
So
cash flow
my only point is that so that there are a lot of projects that have been delayed, just like the one at Hickory Ridge, because of changes that happened, because of time period, because of other things that intervened.
I don't know whether there's a lot or not. I'll look at that. You see it every quarter and we'll pull that out and look at it.
Eric?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up on something that Tina referred to with deficit budgets. So I noticed the budget calls for a cash deficit of $630,000. A, would the tot lot affect this cash deficit? And B, is this an example of a deficit budget that Tina is referring to, or is this not considered a deficit budget?
Yeah, it's not a deficit budget. And Lynn, I think Lynn Schwartz is on the call. If I could ask you to walk through that, you had, and it kind of ties into the training that the board received this summer.
Yeah, I manage the cash forecasting process, and we are projecting for more cash to be dispersed in fiscal year 23 than to be received, and that's where the negative 630 comes from. That's very different than a P&L GAAP accounting deficit, and it is only in one period. We expect to end FY23 with in the neighborhood of $10 million. So, and that's always an estimate, and you never know exactly when your cash is going to go out and when it's going to come in, but our estimates have been pretty good. Of the 630, I do want to say though that we did accrue the expenses related to the Haven, closing the Haven. And we know that we have some continuing expenses through that life of that lease that we're going to have to absorb. So $500,000, the lion's share of that 630 are disbursements we expect to have to make related to the Haven. They were already expensed. We put them through our P&L and expensed them in FY21, but we didn't pay them. We will continue to pay them through the life of the lease. So that's a large part of where the deficit that you refer to, that in FY23, the excess spending is coming from.
And to follow up, if we spent an extra $110,000 on this tot lot, would that add to that cash deficit because we're spending more for the tot lot?
It could.
And one last deficit question. We're about 56 minutes. So just wanted to let you know, Janet.
Thank you. Did you say you had another deficit question?
That was the deficit.
Oh, okay, gotcha. All right. Do we have any final, Jenny?
Yeah, just one suggestion on page 99 of the budget, under the Office of the President, grants. We've listened today, last board meeting and today, to the confusion about what is this board doing regarding grants. And the problem is really that we used on page 99 the wording temporary funding and grant expenses for the IAT fund of $125,000. There was a lot of discussion when we voted on that, and we basically, many of us were saying it's not a grant. CA and the IAT are in partnership relationship in the development of management of Symphony Woods as a downtown park. The IAT is a separate nonprofit organization that has been created by CA and approved by the board of directors to manage and protect CA assets. So this is misleading, and it's causing us problems, which was my concern when I saw the word grant. I think we have to change it to management funding because we have created them. They are responsible for managing and our assets, protecting them, etc. And the grant process, for those of you that are new on the board, CA does have criteria regarding grants, and they advertise those grants usually 6 months, like in June or July. And any agency that's a nonprofit that wants to apply can do that, and then they're evaluated. It used to be with Michelle Miller. And then they're presented to the board with the staff recommendation to approve this or that. And there's a total budget for that particular area of grants. Those are grants to other organizations. But this is a different type of organization that we actually created and that deserves our support. In fact, I was kind of shocked to see 125,000. I thought when we were talking that it was going to be 200,000 we had asked the staff to look at. I know that was my motion for 200,000, so I don't know how we lost 75,000 there. But I think we're causing our own problem, and we are going to have letters from other organizations requesting grants. We do not have a grant process in FY23 budget. We need to somehow communicate that. We've created a lot of communication problems with the public. So I'd like to see that change, that line change to whatever management funding, for example.
Susan?
Yeah, so that's why it says temporary funding and grant expense. And unfortunately, it is a grant. It could be a grant or a loan, and those are really the two options. So that's, and the previous dollars, if you see large dollars in previous years, it included the Inner Arbor grant funding. And,
okay,
and
that
grant
is
agreements are written between the two organizations.
Okay, one
So
last.
maybe to your point, what we've typically called grants is the one that needs a different name.
Well,
But
right.
it sounds to me like they are all grants, just for technical purposes. But
Okay, last point then, is our communication people that are getting all these letters, is our communication department responding saying we do not have a grant process this year because we don't. Not the grant process that we've always had, which has criteria and you have to apply almost 6 months ago. We do not have that process. Are they responding back that CA does not have that process this year? How do you explain it is what I'm trying to say.
I do want to be clear that we had been communicating that we were not having a grant process because that was the staff recommendation going into the budget process. And during early conversations, the board, when we were in the pre-budget and the test cases and the scenarios, did not indicate at that time to include the grant budget. So that is what we communicated. As we have discussed previously, the only grant request that we received and I had gotten inquiries, but I had said, we're not doing grant processes. We're still pandemic constrained in FY23. That's our plan. And so the board did request for the single grant for Inner Arbor Trust. And that meeting, and I'm happy to go back and check notes, but our guidance that we had recorded was that the desire was 200,000 and the floor was 100,000, and staff was to come back with a number in between. So I do want to clarify that the board moved and approved a max of 200,000, not staff did not subtract 75. So we got a range of 100 to 200 and put in the 125. The main difference in that number was the result of the minimum wage increase and the wage compression that was larger as an impact than we had originally anticipated. And then my last statement, Columbia Festival of the Arts, as you heard in last meeting and tonight, is the only other organization that has come forward and formally requested funds as part of the grant process. So we have not received, many letters. If you're indicating something specific, perhaps I'm not aware of it, but I've not been made aware of any other requests we've received except those two.
I think Ginny's point was not so much that as that Inner Arbor Trust should be treated differently than other nonprofits that request money from CA, since it's controlling a CA asset. I think that's what you said, right, Ginny?
Actually, I thought I made that very clear. Yes, thank you.
It was not super clear, but
I do want to clarify that I thought I heard in the second part, how is the communications department responding to all the letters you're getting from other organizations? So I'm sorry if I somehow misheard that, but that's what I was responding to. So not that the financial terminology of grant versus loan is definitely in Susan's wheelhouse. I thought I heard, how is the communications department responding to the other grant letters? So.
Okay, so the point is, I guess we're not saying
Jenny, Dick's up next.
Real quick, I think Ginny's got a point. I think we have a problem with terminology here, and this is not a traditional grant. It's kind of like a service fee or a maintenance cost or some other title. It's not a grant. It's some kind of other kind of expense, and maybe we should be thinking between now and 2 weeks from now as to what we ought to call it.
You could call it a loan, and we could set it up that way if that would be more appropriate.
Well, loans have to be paid back, so that they're really, you couldn't call it a loan. It's an expense. They're doing things.
I think that's Susan's point, is that if there's, for our bookkeeping purposes, we either have to call it a grant or a loan. And unfortunately, I mean, we could potentially communicate it as something separately, but in our financial statements, it's still going to be grants regardless. Yeah. Unless you prefer a loan, which I don't think it
but
is.
it's just that this causes a confusion, and other organizations come to us saying, you gave that grant, why can't we have a grant? We've already said we didn't have a grant process.
We do have a grant process.
No, we didn't do it this year.
Correct.
Okay. We do have a grant process, and we'll probably do it next year. But my thinking is, what we're paying Inner Arbor for is programming, for insurance. There are ways, and maybe creative ways to make this not a grant.
Lynn?
That's all.
Yeah. Again, the trust, the relationship between the trust and CA is supposed to be, fairly seamless. And what the trust has been able to do in the last 2 or 3 years is really bring in substantial funds, much more funds than CA would ever be able, I think, to put into the property, solely for the use of improving the property, programming. We met 2 days ago with the Chesapeake Foundation, again, we're planting canopy trees, we're planting, under trees. These are things that CA does not have to pay for. The trust spends an enormous amount of time forging these partnerships, these relationships, and pursuing these grants. It needs now, again, especially post-COVID and not having had any kind of operating help from CA in the last couple of years, we need it. We can operate much more efficiently if we're not having to scramble to see how we're going to pay the insurance bill, the next legal bill, that kind of thing. We're under stress, yes, but we're planning a fantastic season. And again, this is all to CA's benefit. This money goes into CA's land. The personnel aren't charged for, we don't charge you for it. We give it to you. It's there. It's yours. It's ours. It's yours. And we need some help.
Okay, we are over time. Eric, do you have a burning question, or were you going to tell me we're over time? You're muted.
I was going to tell you we're well over time. I just want to reiterate one question. So I know the president's office is adding 2.5 staff. Will those 2.5 FTEs be able to help the villages enforce architectural covenants?
No. So Susan, do you want to address that?
Yeah, so thank you, Eric, for sending that ahead of time. So that's in the general counsel's budget, and I looked into that. We have added in additional legal fees, and that's also goes to that's a key part of that is the architectural covenant cases that CA takes on. But there is no backlog of cases, and there hasn't been for a couple years. There for several years since we added the position to that department. So there are 53 open cases. I think there are 2 in River Hill, and I did check into that. So I'm not sure what the issues are, but there are not challenges with that at this time, and haven't been for a couple of years. So maybe if there's more specifics, we could look into that.
Okay, it might be specifics. Also, might be operating on old data.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, moving on to item B, IT division update. Ormsby.
Okay, so this is our, I think most everyone got to meet Ormsby at an event we had a few months ago, but this is the first time that Ormsby Carmen, our Director of IT, is going to be presenting to the board. So I just wanted to briefly give the welcome. He has been a great value add already and an asset. I think you're going to see it in the presentation. He is hitting his, or actually just passed his 90-day mark, so newer than me, so yay. But has already made an impact. Rave reviews on a few things you will not see in the presentation is real ability to be a strategic business partner, very collaborative in his work methodology, is already bringing a lot of project management capacity that I think is going to benefit a lot of other departments as well in the way that kind of looking at the IT needs and the rollout. So again, a continuation of these department updates. So the board is informed and up to date on what we're doing operationally. So Ormsby, thanks.
Thank you, Lakey. Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me okay? All right, great. So my name is Ormsby Carvin. Lakey, thank you for the warm welcome and intro. And it's great to actually see everyone again on the board here at CA. I am going to be presenting the technology update this evening, and I will take some questions at the end of this presentation. So some main takeaways just to lay the groundwork on the front end. I'll be pointing to some insights, some in-flight initiatives that the technology department is undergoing. Be talking through a little bit about how we're supporting the organization to achieve outcomes, touching a little bit on some future initiatives, and then of course we'll get into the exciting topic of cybersecurity and mitigating some of the risk and threats in that area. A little bit about the agenda. Again, much of what I just described, but I will end the presentation just with some feedback and accomplishments from some of the technology teams, initiatives and efforts over the last year. So understanding my position, my position in the organization as coming in as someone new, again, just over my 90 days, I really wanted to recalibrate and look at our technology team and start to rethink what our goals were in context of CA and the business entities that we support within the organization. So in order to build those goals, a couple of things that we took a look into was first doing this bit of introspective look into the technology team, right? Making sure we do a skills assessment, assess what type of capacity we have amongst our team members, and also capacity around other business units who have technology tie-ins at CA. We also looked at what the organization needs are. So we collaborate, as Lakey said, with our business partners in community operations, community programs, and across the organization to help contribute input into what those goals could be. And we also, of course, take guidance from industry best practices. There's a lot of frameworks that's already established that we want to make sure we incorporate into those goals. We are a community organization, so it will be very short-sighted if we don't do or take a look at, the socioeconomic factors that impact the organization and what are the technology drivers around those bits, as well as the compliance pieces that we need to be accountable to from an auditing and controls perspective. And there's an elephant in the room called the COVID-19 pandemic. There's been a lot of lessons learned from that in terms of how we approach service delivery here at CA. And we are absolutely taking that new knowledge into our goals. So with that, one of the concise sort of goal that we put together to encompass how we're going to move forward in the technology team is really around empowering innovation within CA. So I've heard a lot of conversation tonight around rethinking how we did things, even 10, 20, 30 years ago in respects to the tot lot. But we're thinking about that from all business aspects around CA and how technology could actually, support and empower innovation. So it's a big part of our goal. And again, that really ties into creating more access for CA team members and community partners, at the same time focusing on security, resiliency, and productivity. So in terms of how we support the business in the technology team, the main focus for us is really about enabling outcomes, right? Looking at the data that we have in front of us, analyzing that data with our business partners, and taking a service-based approach to enable outcomes for the business units that we support. So we want to ensure that all technology solutions that we are looking into and initiatives are really being driven by a business need, not just Armsby Technology says we need this new widget because it's the coolest thing on the block. So that is our lead focus. And tied to that, we want to make sure things are really process driven and technology enabled. So again, taking a back step in terms of we're not leading with the widget, we're leading with the process, and we're supporting and empowering that process with technology. Transition into some in-flight initiatives that might be important for the board to sort of be aware of in terms of the bigger picture that we are working on at least for the next 6 months to a year within the technology team. First and foremost is around security, cybersecurity enhancements. Quick disclaimer, I can't get into any deep level of detail regarding cybersecurity just because we want to protect some of the controls that we have in place and not put that information out there for our adversaries to exploit. But at a high level, there are things happening in our organization around our cybersecurity program for everything from enabling multi-factor authentication, which most of you experience when you access information assets within CA, to hardware and appliance firewall upgrades within our data center, and sort of all that perimeter and also internal security control. So we've got a full program that we are continually looking at and actually doing some improvements on in that area. We're also partnering with our partners in finance and also in community programs, because we're looking at ways to modernize the customer experience systems that we have within CA, right? So we know our customers are taking advantage of our services and interacting with it through some sort of technology medium, either booking a class or managing their membership, and really diving into some discovery around how can we modernize that engagement. Again, thinking through a process-led perspective and thinking globally across. There are things that we interact with our customers with that touches across community operations and community programs and elsewhere, member services within the organization, and really starting to get into this singular look of the customer and all the services that they engage with CA. The other big thing that we are putting some legwork into is around asset management. COVID has really expanded our technology footprint, not only from an end user, mainly from an end user device piece, because we've got a lot of hybrid work, but it also brings additional reasons for us to be accountable to that technology and be good stewards. So, standing up our asset management platform was work that actually began before my tenure, but we'll be looking into ways to actually, make that a little bit more robust and get some better reporting from that platform. The last bullet point on this list is really talking through expanding broadband capacity. There's this initiative that we are leading in the technology department to build out better bandwidth and broadband capacity to certain facilities. So far, we've completed 20 sites, and we've got 2 pending, the Teen Center and the Art Center, in the very short term, and we'll be working our way through expanding that capability and putting in beefier circuits to allow for more capacity around broadband at CA facilities. Finally, I do want to highlight, when we talk about the data-driven analytics approach, this is a big in-flight piece for us because there is so much data. Lakey ran through some ArcGIS mapping. We've got member data. We've got logs. We've got a ton of data in CA, and we're really taking a conscious, positive look into how could we turn that into information, reporting, and analytics, so that we can really enable everyone across CA to make those data-driven decisions. And so far, we've partnered with our general counsel, human capital, the president's office, to really just bring and understand what the needs are and start to address those through building better analytics and dashboards around the data that's available to us. So that's something we're really, really focused on as well. Jumping a little bit into cybersecurity, I am just surfacing this slide, not necessarily to dive into it, but this comes from the Cybersecurity Infrastructure Security Agency, CISA. It's a mouthful. But it really just highlights that cybersecurity is an ongoing problem in the world today. And, our people us here live in the world today. So it absolutely impacts CA in terms of our awareness and thinking through a cybersecurity program. It's really us thinking through beyond just the team member experience while they are in CA, but making sure we help our team members develop habits to carry outside of CA to make sure their cyber hygiene that they're using, external to CA also comes back in and translates well and better protects our environment. So there's always a lot going on in that space. And to give the board and the team here some reassurance, one of the things that we are really proud of in terms of securing CA information assets is the adoption of our multi-factor authentication. So I wanted to surface that stat because what we know, at least from information and research standpoint, is that once there is a second factor of authentication enabled, right, to access systems, the what you know, which is your password, plus the what you have, a PIN number or something on your phone, it dramatically reduces the risk of accounts being compromised. So here at CA, over 96% of all user accounts, all team member accounts, are actively using multi-factor authentication to protect CA's information assets, including board members and so forth. So everyone is enrolled in it. You cannot access CA's systems without that MFA bit. But I really just wanted to surface for the board in terms of how widely adopted that control is and its benefits around CA. The other thing that I want to circle back to, just really tying it into this bit that went into our goal of looking at best practices. There's been a lot of work done at CA to protect or to build a program around the information security practice here at CA. But honestly, we haven't standardized on a framework that is widely adopted, which will give us the benefit to really adopt something that we can audit against. And then, it's repeatable and have something that we can define key metrics around, right, to really dive into the performance of a security program. So even though we have, we've identified our assets and we have acceptable use policies and all the bits that, are already existing, we really want to roll that into a framework that we can make sure we are continually identifying gaps and building on that. So to that end, we've actually decided to standardize on the NIST cybersecurity framework. NIST is the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And we have chartered a security governance committee to really start to do the work, to collate all the security program elements that are existing, the ones that there may be gaps in that we need to develop around, and we are building a solid plan to really roll that out in the coming months. So I'm very excited about that. We recently in December did our most recent cyber awareness training. Reaching our users is by far the most important piece of our cyber security program, right? It's all about your weakest link and all about the people and how they access systems. So I'm proud and happy to report that we have achieved the highest completion rate of that training since we started rolling this out. It happens quarterly, by the way. And last month's training, or at the end of December's training, was actually 17+% greater participation than the training before it. So I know members of—
I don't mean to interrupt you, but can you tell us what the board completion rate is?
Sure, I do not have that in front of me, but I can resurface that as a takeaway.
Thank you.
To the meeting, it's fine. Thank you. But I do know the board members contributed to this 70% participation rate. And to your point, Janet, I think one of the things that the board can continue to do in terms of enabling this program is really just continue to participate in those quarterly trainings and just lead from your seat in that space. So that would be very helpful as we continue this program. But what we see in terms of what that means to CA, the more folks who participate in the awareness, the better they actually are able to identify threats, sift through, malicious phishing email attempts, and ultimately it contributes in a very positive way to what we track as our cyber risk score, right? We look at a fuel gauge, red, yellow, green, and what we want to see is we're leaning more into that green bucket. We always follow our cyber awareness training with some phishing attempts. So there's a program that goes out. And, if you are caught on that hook, then we will take some remediating steps to make sure that, our team members are continually trained in a way that, works for them. So part of the lessons learned around the cyber awareness bits is as we think through how can we increase our participation rate, because the more team members we reach, the better protected that we are. We heard feedback from our partners in community programs who were a leader in this space and really wanted us to figure out a way to get better visibility into team leads, into how their team members are engaging with the training. So we took that as a challenge, and we built out some, again, better reporting and some dashboards, so we can roll that out to help team leads actually drive accountability and ultimately drive more participation and a higher completion rate, and having a better positive impact on our organization's risk score. Around team development and people care, we've done quite a bit of work in that space in the last really 6 to 9 months or so. Most recently, we've actually promoted Scott Coleman to an IT operations manager. He previously served in the IT network manager role, but that position really oversaw a lot of our frontline IT service delivery bodies of work. So it was beyond just, a network operations a bit. So now we have really, aligned and identified what the roles and responsibilities are, aligned our positions to that, and also the positions that fall under that management span of control, to make sure that those positions really appropriately capture what team members' day-to-day and roles and responsibilities are, which honestly sets expectations and outcomes amongst our team members in a more positive way. We've also started to assign some accountability, or I should say responsibility, to our security program. So we're, again, building that structure around it. So we've got specific team members where this is part of their focus now, and it's part of their roles and responsibilities. And I'm always happy to point out, I have team members actively engaged in continuous learning and professional development, and I'm excited to do so, because ultimately, even though the knowledge is going into their head, it's coming out of their practice to benefit CA. So, it's always good to see team members get certified in domains of technology. That absolutely helps CA's programs. And finally, the work that we do really touches everyone in the organization. And oftentimes IT is sort of in the background, until things are broken. So it's always good to hear some feedback from the service delivery that we do. And part of the way that we collect this feedback is through our IT survey. So if you open a support ticket, we complete the work for you, it's resolved. There's a survey you receive to sort of, give us feedback around our service delivery. And the team has done a fantastic job. This is what, the outcome of the survey tells me. So we've gotten over 205 survey feedback responses in the year of 2021. And you would be hard pressed to find a negative sentiment in any of that feedback. So it really shows that the team is solving problems or supporting our team members and solving their problems in a very positive way, again and again and again. I like processes that are repeatable, and this really goes to show that we have been successful in this. And I would just like to end by saying that I know it's been a very challenging year for everyone, and it's been very demanding on the technology team to enable a lot of the things through COVID. So I do want to publicly say thank you to the technology team here at CA and all the technology partners that we have supporting us as well. So I definitely wanted to end with that. And also thank you to the consultants and some of the partners that we had come in to make sure that, we fill that gap before our leadership filled this seat and this position. So thank you all for that. I will take any questions.
Thank you, Armsby. Eric?
Yeah, just one quick question since we don't have a lot of time. So I noticed you have 96% are using two-factor authentication, which is a standard policy that everybody's going to use. So the question I have is, what are the other 4% doing to get on the network?
Sure, that's a great question, Eric. There are just some positions in CA that don't access technology. So the 4% don't use the system, and it's because they, for whatever reason, their role doesn't call for it. Sometimes, in my experience, we've seen this as custodians or some of our field workers, right, who just may not access the system. Again, they're enrolled, but they're just not using the resources yet. So we've identified that, and we are trying to build strategies in terms of, how can we better engage? Like, what is the carrot, right, that we can put in front of our team members so that, they know that these systems are available to them and that they're accessing it. We've had these conversations with our HR partners because there are things in the HR bucket that most people would want to access, right? Their pay stubs and W-2s and things of that nature. So how can we piggyback off of some of those things to make sure folks know that they could log in to get that information and, sort of enroll into the MFA practice as well. Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Armsby. That was a lot of really great information, and I'm happy to hear all of the things you're doing to keep our data safe. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, next up, we have our update from the CA team member DE&I committee.
I wanted to do a quick intro of this and kind of framing why we're hearing from this group. If everyone remembers, when my evaluation framework was put together by the board, there was a significant amount of discussion around DE&I. And at that time, there was actually a suggestion to form a group of employees. And I, informed the board that we already have a DE&I committee that is employees, and not everyone on the board was aware of that. So at that point, it was identified that clearly we need to be better about communicating that. But then part two was, in our last VOC meeting, I brought up hearing directly from the committee. So Monica is here as the senior staff lead that coordinates the committee, and actually is going to first provide background on kind of how the committee was formed, which she was instrumental in, which was before I arrived here at CA, and then kind of what we've done since. So just wanted to kind of frame that out. So Monica.
Okay, and you will have an opportunity to hear from team members. I do have one team member on standby that will provide some information, and then I also have a nice video clip for you to see of some of the people that are on the team. So I will go ahead and get started and share my screen with you. Let's see here. And just want to check in to see if you can actually see my screen, because I can't see any of you.
Yes.
Okay, very good. All right. So the goal here is to go through the agenda and the presentation and ask for questions at the end. I should have started by saying, for those of you on the call who may not, I may not have met yet, my name is Monica McMillan Ajayi, and I am the Director for HR, Diversity and Inclusion here at CA. So we're going to go through why and how we got started, let you know who the committee members are. You'll hear voices of the committee members, the accomplishments that have happened so far, and then also some goals that the committee is looking forward to accomplishing. So how we got started, you know, just like with many other organizations, the George Floyd murder really, you know, put this on the forefront for organizations, and we were no different. The pandemic also assisted with organizations really looking at diversity, equity, and inclusion in a different way. Instead of organizations kind of in theory, having the theory that, you know, the whole person comes to work, organizations really started to lean into that in a different way. And so listening sessions were put together around the whole George Floyd murder within organizations. Organizations also put out statements to their employees and to the communities that they were in, and we did the same. And as a result of all of that, we formed this committee. I do want to say that within our listening sessions, we didn't get a whole lot of participation, but we didn't want to sit around and just kind of try to figure out what was going on. So we decided to do additional outreach with our team members and did a survey. And in that survey, it came out that some of our team members really wanted us to have a DE&I committee. And so as a result of that feedback, here we are. So more about how we got started. I did a call for volunteers, and all I really wanted, to be perfectly honest with you, was people who really wanted to participate, engage, and really be part of something special. And so what I did was worked with the leadership and managers to try to vet the team members who were coming forward. And fortunately, because we have such a good workforce here, there were no problems or issues with anyone that wanted to join the committee. And so we were able to do all the work around getting people organized. And by February 2021, we established the DE&I group. So the committee consists of employees from across all of the departments within CA. So I'm very glad to say that we do have full engagement from that perspective. And we also have employees participating who are both full-time and part-time team members. Subcommittees were formed within this committee, and so we have 3 subcommittees, and they are the Education, Communications, and Hiring and Promotions subcommittees. We have 16 members participating on the committee, all from, again, across the organization in different departments, and different lengths of service, and full-time and part-time. So I'm really happy about that. So we definitely have engagement in a way that we really did not know what to expect. And so it's very, very positive. One of the things that I think is going to be very important for you to hear is the voices of our committee members. So this evening, I actually have Renee Buckman, who has joined us, and she's going to introduce herself and tell her a bit about why she's on the committee. And then I'm going to show you a video clip of some other team members so that you can hear from them. Renee?
Yes, good evening. I hope everyone can hear me. I'm glad to be invited to this evening. But yeah, I felt as though it was important for me to be a part of the DEI committee so I could contribute to offering and making sure that we provided, and I'm sorry, I'm just drawing a blank, but to make sure that we provided information and we celebrated the diversity in the organization, but also in the community. But I also feel as though that what I would want to see as an accomplishment is to make sure that CA stays on the forefront of diversity and equity and inclusion, but not only, just because it's the thing to do, but because we do it with a purpose and on purpose.
Thank you, Renee. And so I'd like to provide you with a video clip of some of our team members who are also on the committee. So bear with me for a second while I pull that up for you. Can you still see my screen?
Yes.
Is it okay? Is it the presentation that you're seeing or the actual
Presentation.
I'm Valerie Montague. My name is Grace Chang. My name is Jason Heath. My name is Christopher.
Okay, let me go back.
I'm
so
Valerie
that,
Montague. My name is Grace Chang.
hold
My name
on.
is Jason Heath. My name is Christopher Clint. My name is.
Hold on. Let me get out of the presentation and go into the videos. Okay, we're going to stop sharing there. And then we're going to share again. We go to the videos. Let's see here.
I'm Valerie Montague. My name is Grace Chang.
My name is Jason Heath. My name is Christopher Clem.
My name is Leslie Getchins.
My name is Mike Schramm.
I'm Tasha Young from Learning and Organizational Development, Program Manager of International Exchange and Multicultural Programs.
I work as an operations/project manager for capital improvements under community operations.
I work in CA's Admin Services Department as assistant to the Senior Vice President.
Assistant operations manager with the community outreach open space department.
I'm in the Learning and Organization Development Department.
I've been working for CA's Information Technology Department for around 7 years now.
And I've lived in Columbia for the better part of the last 50 years.
When CA decided to launch the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, I knew I wanted to be a part of this group. A group that would focus on not only promoting and celebrating diversity in our organization, but would also work to educate our team members on the importance of not just respecting, but valuing differing perspectives, thoughts, and approaches.
I asked to join this committee because the issues around race, equity, and belonging have been ongoing conversations throughout my life, from the time my family immigrated to this country from Korea when I was 6 years old.
Growing up in Guyana, South America, my parents ingrained in me that education was priority. One of their favorite sayings was, once you gain knowledge, it could never be taken from you.
I'm a strong believer in everyone having a fair chance at life, no matter your race, religion, identity, or beliefs. I believe you should always be judged on merit and how you treat other people. I'm also a strong believer in second chances.
And I joined the DE&I committee to ideally diversify my own field. Information technology is a field that's male dominated and has been for decades, and I'm hoping to see that change.
To give people of all backgrounds and orientations a chance to excel here and to feel valued for their perspectives, their history, their creativity and style, as well as their intellect and their skills.
I wanted the opportunity to make this, to make CA a place for all to come work and play.
So I really appreciate that CA is giving team members a platform to have what are sometimes very difficult conversations around these issues.
As a vehicle to encourage and promote acquiring knowledge about the importance and strength gained by embracing diversity.
Part of this committee is that we're here, that we can help answer these questions and help make that realization.
I hope to help CA reduce bias and indifference in our community by making people aware of these feelings and having CA help ensure that fairness and equity are desirable and normal.
I believe CA has done a great job being a diverse, equitable, and inclusive place to live, work, and play. I'm proud to say I work and live in such an amazing place. I hope I can continue to help CA with this very important mission.
So I hope that I can add value to these conversations based on my life experiences, and I hope I can work with this committee to really push for thoughtful policy and programs.
I'm really excited to be a part of the DE&I committee and ecstatic to just continue working on our initiatives and making CA a great organization to work for and be a part of.
I hope to help CA to continue to establish itself as a place where the commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion are core to who we are as an organization.
So let's get to work.
Okay, so that is, so there's 16 members of the committee, but I just wanted to, give you an opportunity to just get a snapshot of some of the people who are part of it. All right, so let me share my screen again here. Can you guys see this presentation?
Yes.
Yes. Oh, cool. And for some reason, it is a little bit stuck. Hold on. Okay, there we go. All right. So the DE&I committee formed, as I mentioned, and we actually put together a charter. And the charter is, as you can see here, to recommend and guide actionable plans for education, communication, programs and initiatives that champion and support diversity and inclusion. And when the committee members come up with various ideas, they are presented to the SLT for a decision. What typically happens as far as process is a committee member or a group of committee members will come up with an idea, and it's discussed amongst the committee and voted on as to whether or not the initiative is something that should be presented to the SLT for consideration. And if it has any type of budget implications, it definitely has to go to the SLT. But overall, anything that the group is trying to accomplish, the team determines, okay, is this something we really are interested in doing? And if so, let's go ahead and present it. And the decision-making process entails the committee members actually getting on the agenda for an SLT meeting, presenting their case for why, an idea is important to pursue. And then the SLT gets the opportunity to think and talk about that information after the committee member leaves. And sometimes the decision is made right there in that SLT meeting, but in most times, the SLT needs some time to think and talk about it a few times and then come up with a thoughtful decision. And then I'm given that decision and I deliver that message back to the committee with the reason why or why not to move forward. So that's how the decision-making process works. So some of the things that the committee has presented to the SLT include the pronouns awareness training. As I have shared in the past, the committee felt that was very important for this organization. And so that was presented to the SLT and it was approved and we moved forward with that initiative. Having Juneteenth as a CA holiday was another idea that was presented and approved. Having a DE&I logo for the committee was something that was approved. And then there was an opportunity to participate in a grant that was sponsored by the Horizon Foundation. And the goal there was for Columbia-based organizations to get together and participate in this particular grant to have funds for DE&I purposes around health and wellness. And this was something that came to us pretty late, and so we really didn't have an opportunity to assess who even had grant writing skills on the team. And we had a lot of things on our plate at the time, so the SLT moved not to approve this particular initiative. The subcommittees have been very, very busy at work, and some of the things that the subcommittees have accomplished include the Education Subcommittee working to support all that went along with the optics workshop. This subcommittee has also produced a catalog of terms for the committee itself to become educated on. And then this committee also not only championed the whole pronouns awareness training, but they also put it together and assisted the L&D team with delivering that training. The Communications Subcommittee has also been very hard at work, and that subcommittee has curated activities to share with our team members, specifically around MLK Day. That is the most notable, or one of the most notable things that they curated activities around, as well as a lot of activities around Black History Month. And one thing that I'm really happy to share with you around Black History Month is the committee suggested that CA, or that we put out a little known Black history fact every single day for Black History Month. And so I did that, and very organically, different employees across the organization literally started reaching out to me on a daily basis with their own little known Black history facts that they researched because of the inspiration of seeing these facts come across their email every day. And I've received so many of them that I can't even keep up. So what I've had to do is create a folder for employees to dump their information in so that all employees could have access to that, as well as what we put out as a committee on a daily basis during Black History Month. So it's just, you know, such a joy to see such engagement very organically amongst our staff, just by really bringing them into diversity, equity, and inclusion. Some other things that the Communications Committee worked on and accomplished included creating a DE&I email address so that team members can engage with us and give us their ideas. And a monthly newsletter also goes out, which highlights the various holidays and observances of different ethnic groups and nationalities. The Hiring and Promotion Subcommittee, they were very instrumental in presenting the idea of putting language in our job ads to tell diverse candidates to just apply. And so that was very important to us, and that is something that you know, we are actually doing as we speak, as we're advertising for jobs. This committee has also started to review the job descriptions to ensure that there isn't any language, prohibitive language, that would deter various groups from applying. And so that is something that the team is working very hard on, and will be presenting to the SLT to determine, you know, do we need to change some of the language in our job descriptions. This team has also assisted the HR group with getting all that needed to happen with onboarding our special needs volunteers from Hammond High School. And so this team definitely has a lot of goals, and needless to say, it does take you know, a lot of work to pull off a lot of the things that the DE&I committee it has pulled off and is hoping to pull off. And so, we have things that we want to accomplish, and we're really looking forward to those things. And here you can see a list. It includes having a catalog of terms for all employees to access, awareness circles where team members can feel comfortable getting together and talking about things like unconscious bias and how to navigate this whole DE&I journey and making mistakes. So we're figuring out how to create awareness circles so that our team members can participate in them. Affinity groups is something else that we're looking to establish. And we're also looking to figure out how to work with our team members who are in charge of planning various events on the upfront end so that we can influence the DE&I component of those events. And then looking at how we go about our promotions and hiring is another goal of the committee. The committee also plans to assess our recruitment sources. So for example, are we advertising for our jobs in all of the places that we can to get the most diverse candidates that we can possibly attract? This group is also looking to assess our employee census and provide input to establish metrics. And we've been together for about a year now, so we are putting plans together for a new membership drive and hopefully onboard new members by March 31st. So that is the update for the DE&I group, and I will open it up for questions. Eric.
Yeah, it's probably more of a question for Susan, but so the SLT approves funding for budget-related DEI items. How does that trace back into the budget that we're going to vote on in 2 weeks?
So there's fund in HR for in the HR budget for DEI activities, and also some of the things that I think that Monica was talking about would be events and activities that are in the department's budgets or funds that benefits that would be reallocated from some area to another. So there's additional funds in this budget, and it was noted in the transmittal letter that there is DE&I funding in there.
Do you know how much there is? Because it's not really broken out.
It's about $120,000 for FY23.
Okay, thanks.
Tina?
First off, thank you for all of this and all of this work and all of this information. I'm just delighted to see all of this. Wow. I also wanted to ask, like some really tiny little details. I would, if it's permissible, I would be thrilled to also receive the newsletter to know about the holidays, because I don't know everything, and I would love to learn more about what I don't know. And then same with the pronoun training.
Yes.
And I'm going to assume that I can't be the only one on the board who thinks that wouldn't hurt us in the slightest either. And so I would love to know how I make a formal request for us to do that as well.
Yes, so actually, we've been talking about that within the committee, and so we have the actual presentation available. But the question that I have is, would you like to go through that training with it being facilitated the way we did for our managers, or do you just want the deck and the videos that went along with it?
For myself, I would value facilitation. I don't know what I don't know, so I'm going to assume somebody else has more expertise than I do in this arena. So okay. I would, I mean, I can read a slide deck. I don't want to assume that I would have the full understanding after that.
Okay.
And
So I can
available.
facilitate, Monica, I can facilitate kind of taking a poll of who would actually be interested, and if we decide to do a day and time, offer that up to the group. And whoever is, interested and available would be able to attend. And then if anyone wants the slide deck, as well as the videos that accompany the training, I can provide that separately as well. So I can facilitate that with the board.
Okay, excellent. Then, so we're fully prepared to deliver that training.
I had two questions. One was around celebrations because I know that we've had people like from residents speak out, but also like there is so much multiculturalism in Howard County. So I'm curious if you anticipate the DE&I committee. I'm not sure if that's working with our multicultural department or on behalf of, but there are so many of those holidays, and I know we can't do everyone every year, but I think at one point we threw out the idea of rotating or something. I was just curious if there's any expectation around something like that.
So actually, as you saw, Grace is part of the committee.
Mm-hmm.
And so Grace has been really good about making sure that the DE&I committee is aware of a lot of the different things that are happening, and we get to provide input to her, from a DE&I perspective. So we work collaboratively that way. And then we talk about the various celebrations, and she's actually the person that puts together the newsletter for the various holidays. So, we're definitely collaborating across the entire organization. And as Dennis is working so hard to get the lakefront performances more diverse, he's provided that information to the DE&I committee. As other groups like Archives is looking to, make sure they stay on top of things, we're involved with understanding what's happening. And, it's a slow process where we're starting to weave in. But we are making plans to get in front of those things so that as those events are being planned, they can be looked at through a DE&I lens. And we love the idea of participating, so we're planning to do that too.
Awesome, thank you. And my second question was if board members would like to be involved in any way, are there any opportunities for board members to interact or get involved with the committee?
We hadn't thought about that. So that's amazing. So let me think about that. And
yeah, no pressure.
I think we
Just,
want to talk to
I'd
the
love to get
employees.
involved.
Yeah, just to be honest, I do think we would need to talk with the employees to
For
just
sure.
kind of see their reaction, just to be fair.
Mhm.
And maybe it's perhaps not on a regular basis, but maybe on some kind of, specific interaction, something like
Oh yeah,
that.
I'm not going to
But-
crash the party.
but
But I thought if there was
from
something
Monica's point, I think
structured.
it's great to get the inquiry. So, but I think we kind of want to vet it with them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Monica? Okay, thank you, Monica.
All right. Thank you so much for your interest, everybody.
All right, that wraps up our work sessions topics. Now we're moving on to the questions only section. Do we have any questions from that section? Andy?
Yeah, development tracker. So if Jessica's around. So the lakefront guideline changes, which have yet to be scheduled for the planning board. I had raised two concerns, which were the changed from 9-story to 13-story buildings, and then the new street scape called the street type 3B. And I guess those are still in Howard Hughes's plans to present to the planning board.
Hey, Andy, I'm on. Yeah, so the final development plan has not yet gone to the final development plan amendment has not yet been scheduled at the planning board. So we haven't seen any official submission of it. But we have seen it go through the context of it go through the pre-submission community meeting and the design advisory panel for their advisory comments on it. Related to the two topics you mentioned, they are showing a change, not in the height, but in the number of stories within the same height profile that is approved. So the height plan is 145 feet under the current approved amendments, but with 9 stories within that. That was because the prior final development plan was primarily had a very large components of office and retail space, and the current development plan is primarily residential, which doesn't have as tall of floor plates between the stories. So that's the amendment they're asking for, and that's only for the northmost portion of that site. I think it's actually technically kind of northeast-ish. But then the street profile is the one addition they made is they want to turn Wynkopen Street, which is the central street of that development, into a primarily kind of pedestrian and bicycle focused street. So while cars would be permitted on it, they want to kind of go curbless, they want to do special pavement, and they want to make sure that it's more of an area kind of like if you've ever been to pedestrian malls or areas like that that used to allow cars to go, but it's primarily focused on creating a walkable environment. That's what they were hoping to do. So they created a new street type for that particular street section.
Well, actually, Jessica, yeah, those points are good. I think my real difficulty is there is nothing in the document which says street type 3B is restricted to solely Wynkopen Street. And the same thing with the height. Yeah, okay, so it's 13 stories because we're going to put residential here. But the guidelines are not that specific. The guidelines just create a street type 3B, and it's up to whoever happens to decide if they're going to use that type. It doesn't say there's a restriction to only Wynkopen or this type of thing. So I think that's one of the things we have to pay attention to is we have to be careful we don't say, yeah, this particular plan by Howard Hughes is great, because once you change it, I mean, it's like zoning. Once you change it, everybody can do 13-story buildings. You know, it's not just Howard Hughes, and it's not just in this particular lot or something. And so I really think that even the planning board has got to start thinking about putting some, I'll say, criteria on when these types of special things can be used. Because otherwise, once you put in something, once you have street type 3B, anybody can use it in the plan.
Andy, I'm sorry, I have to correct you. The neighborhood design guidelines include exhibits that limit where the height plan can go. So the parcels that allow for the change in 13 stories is specific to a certain parcel. And that's the same, that it carries forward the same exhibit model for the height plan that was done under the original Downtown Columbia plan. So it's an amendment to that. And then the same thing happens for the street diagram. They have to provide a hierarchy of streets and identify where they're trying to do those different street types. So the difficulty for the street diagram that I think might have caught you is that it's a very, very light purple color, and it's primarily covered by the name Wynkopen Street, but
Okay.
it's specifically identified as this section of Wynkopen Street is 3B, and then the design guidelines, the amendment itself references the design intent for Wynkopen Street. So it's not applicable across anything. It is applicable to a exhibit tied to that neighborhood design guideline. And I would be happy to show you the exhibits.
I think we could talk about that a little bit later, because
Yeah.
I was thinking that the guidelines are, I mean, you get more specific when you do the SDP. I mean, when you get down to the actual sites and the FDP versus the actual guidelines. But okay, that's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Dick?
Yes, I wasn't able to sit in on the design advisory panel. Last night we had a village board meeting. Any particular feedback you have from that, or?
Yeah, I mean, I had the pleasure of both attending the Pre-Submission Community Meeting and the Design Advisory Panel, so I've had a lot of Lake River North this week. Yeah, I would say that the Design Advisory Panel, I mean, it was a 4-hour meeting, so they talked about a lot of different things.
Well, in a few minutes.
Yeah, I mean, they talked about a lot of different things, including circulation patterns for how residents would enter a parking space, and then how they would access the elevators within the building. So they get very detailed in terms of have people done elevator studies. They talk about the different architectural perspective. They talk about the landscaping. They talk about the different public amenity spaces and parks that are gone. They spent probably half the meeting talking about the architecture. And which is always an interesting and fun conversation to listen to, because architecture is so subjective. So half the architects on the panel said we're raving about some of the buildings and kind of not liking one of the other ones, and then the other architects on the thing were like, well, that's the one we like. We don't really like these ones. So that's kind of the nature of design. But then they focus on, okay, well, let's talk about form and massing and the landscaping. But they're just, in case you want to catch it, those meetings are recorded and posted online, so you can always go back and rewatch it and hear the play-by-play for yourself.
Well, next time I have 4 hours, I'll.
Works really well when you keep your hands busy and just kind of.
Well, that's what we count on you for. The other thing, in the pre-submission meeting, it was Wynkoop Circle, it was Wynkoop Drive, it was Wynkoop Street. Have they decided on what they're going to call it?
So my understanding is the issue right now is that there's currently a Wynkoop Street and a Wynkoop Circle in downtown. I believe that this is called Wynkoop Circle because I think that the naming scheme is going to kind of settle down when we reach full development. I think that's my memory correctly. If you go from the technical documents, right now it's called Wynkoop Extended. So that is the term that is used in the design guidelines. So.
Oh, well. Eventually have a name there. Those parcels that they were talking about architecturally, I assume that parcel A was at the top of the list?
No, so that I kind of laughed because I did catch your comments. Everyone liked parcels A architecture. It was parcel B, which was the step ladder one, that was the one that was bringing out the most amount of discussion points.
Okay.
Which, architecture is very subjective, so.
Well, thanks for attending these meetings so we don't have to, but I appreciate your feedback there.
Okay.
Eric?
Yeah, with regards to Lakefront, are there potential easements that Howard Hughes is going to request from CA?
Yeah, so I mean, we have scattered land throughout there. So they've kind of approached us and said, well, this is what we're planning on the area, and we've started discussions, but we've sort of seen the same concept exhibits that you have. So that's just at the beginning of the discussion. Yeah. But just to note, one of the big ones is the promenade that connects Lakefront North to the mall. That's sort of been carried forward as part of the major downtown Columbia plan. And that crosses a 30 to 50 foot stretch of land that we own that parallels Little Patuxent. So.
Thanks.
Sherry?
Yeah, I also sat in on that discussion, not the design. But a couple of things that I heard, I do agree with Andy's concern about establishing waivers. And this is something, it's not just about this project, but something that we've seen over and over again, that once you establish waivers, they don't just apply to one area. So I understand what you're saying about the downtown plan, but there were lots of parts of the downtown plan that have changed, including density, the number of apartments, all kinds of things that have changed over time and expanded each one of these projects. So what I heard people saying is that there were questions about traffic studies, about how what kind of access, what kind of ADA access, or what kind of access for seniors there would be if parking is a good distance away from where it sounds like commercial, and I'm assuming most of those will be restaurants and such, will be located, and a lot of walking. So that's just one of the things that sort of flagged for me. I've worked with our seniors advisory committee, and I think there are people that are concerned about that.
Sherry, can you clarify what waivers you're concerned about related to that?
The change in the heights going, well, all right. So the change in the number of stories, the height, I understand, is the same from what you've said. The change in the stories puts a lot more apartments in the same footprint, correct?
So just to clarify, it's an amendment to an approved plan, not a waiver. Like a waiver is seeking something else. So they're going through the appropriate process to plan, to change the plan itself. And that's just part of normal iterative design processes as you move through development. It's not a waiver. The total number of units is not being proposed to change. The approved final development plan for Lakefront North is for 775 residential units, which is the same number of residential units they are planning to seek in this current FDP. So they're not changing the number of units, so it doesn't change the density of the Lakefront North area as a neighborhood. So those are about the height. That's what's happening there.
Well, all I know is I heard three different numbers about the number of apartments, is depending upon who is speaking about those different phases and where they were going down. Now, maybe some of that was in reference to the future buildings that were not yet designated, and that pushed it up well over 800, 850, something of that kind. So I understand that this is in phases. So maybe that they don't know yet how much is going to be commercial or how much will be residential or, whatever.
Well, the allocation of units is part of the approved final development plan. So you cannot add more units to an area encompassed by the final development plan without seeking to amend that plan. And then overarching for the residential units across all of downtown, there's phasing across all of downtown and a maximum number of residential units that go into downtown. So those numbers are capped right now with these plans. And they're not seeking an amendment in this final development plan. So there is no change to the residential units for the lakefront neighborhood.
Okay. Did you hear anything under the design aspects that have an effect or an influence on CA's lakefront? Was there anything that came up, or is that not as detailed yet as part of the process?
Can you be more specific? Effect is kind of a broad term. So, because I would take it from the original Downtown Columbia plan, one of the primary goals of the Downtown Columbia plan was to provide more connectivity between everything going on in downtown to the lakefront. So that is being done in this, in both the SDP submission as well as all the design guidelines through the neighborhood square parcel that has the kind of pathway down to the northern section of the Lake Kit stream. Is that what you meant?
Well, did they address anything about seating areas, about benches, about lighting, and any of those kinds of things?
Yeah, I mean, that's throughout, and I'm sorry, we're kind of blending the neighborhood design guidelines and the site development plan together in this conversation. So both in both of those plans, the neighborhood design guidelines clarify all those kind of amenities, and then the site development plan, those actually locate them. And so we have those up and down Waukegan Street. We have them kind of scattered about the neighborhood where they might be appropriate, and then heavily concentrated in the two main public amenity open space areas that are part of it.
Okay, and was there any further mention, this came up at the first meeting, about connecting to the CA pathway system? There was some reference to the ravine and that type of thing. There would be a question about easements. There would be a question about environmental impact because that's all an environmentally sensitive area.
Right. So the original Downtown Columbia plan said that this was a connection that was desirable. So it's been shown since 2010 as having a direct connection from the lakefront neighborhood north into the lake to lake trail. And now that we're at the point where we're actually they're starting to consider, well, what would that mean to actually construct that and what we need to look at. They're sort of evaluating the actual ground there and starting discussions with us about what that would mean. Because obviously, yes, there is a stream there and there is a lake trail, so that all has to be considered as part of this.
Yeah, that's a very sensitive area, as we've heard repeatedly, as far as watershed is concerned and stream restoration. So that is, I just want to flag that for people. That is potentially could be a very expensive type of proposition for CA. So just something to think about. All right, thank you. I appreciate your listening in on all these things.
Oh, no problem.
Okay. Propose new topics. Okay, moving on to chair's remarks. So with the mask mandate lifted, we can consider future meetings and whether or not we want to continue virtually or in person. I will send out a survey to get the pulse of the board on that one. So we can figure out how to move that one forward. This is our last work session before the vote on the draft budgets. Is someone commenting?
Yes, it took me a minute to find my notes here. You were looking at new topics.
Yeah.
We have a whole list of old topics that seem to have fallen by the wayside.
Yep, bring them to the BOC meeting, February 28th.
I will definitely do that.
Okay. Thank you. And actually, just to that point, Dick, you and Tina are both scheduled for the next BOC meeting on February 28th. So if either of you are not able to make it, please let me know. So
I'll be there with bells on my toes.
Okay.
And my list.
Excellent. I want to hear those bells. All right, so this is our last work session before we vote on the draft budgets for fiscal year 23. So thank you all for staying focused. And thank you especially to Susan, Lynn, the whole team, everybody involved with the resident surveys. You know, I think it's great that we were looking for additional ways to reach out to people who have not participated in the process before. Thank you to Armsby and Monica for presenting tonight. I think we got some great info and look forward to hearing more from both of them. Our next meeting is February 24th. That one will be virtual, so prepare for that. And just, you know, as I mentioned earlier in the meeting, you know, we are not expecting changes to the budget at this point. So other than what we've talked about tonight. And that packet will be posted on February 18th for anybody who is interested, as usual. Okay, I think that's it. Everyone enjoy the temperate weather for the next 2 days before it starts snowing again. All right, may I have a motion to adjourn? Motioned.
I'll second it.
I think, was that Ashley that motioned?
Yep.
Thank you. Ashley motioned, Dick seconded. Any opposition? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 10:33 p.m.